I can do what I want when I want to do it. I can do what I need when I need to get through it. When I need someone else, can't be too proud for help, but gotta look after myself. Sometimes it can get lonely, never living in the moment. When the sun is shining, hope that I'm reminded, like how the clouds keep changing. I'm always steady rearranging, going back to the basics of what a good day is. What a good day is. And that's exactly what the day is. But it's exactly what you make it. So please don't go wasting. And I'll do the same, even if it's raining. How could I complain? And my feels got me feeling some type of way. You always free to take a break. Hope you feel what I felt. You gotta look after yourself. Sometimes it can get lonely, never living in the moment. When the sun is shining, hope that I'm reminded, like how the clouds keep changing. I'm always steady rearranging, going back to the basics of what a good day is. 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 And that's exactly what the day is.
All right, it is that time. Y'all know what to do. Drop a 1 in the chat if you can see me. Drop a 1 in the chat if you can hear me. We're gonna go ahead and get into it on this Monday morning, St. Patrick's Day, Amy's B-Day. Oh my goodness, happy birthday, Amy. We're gonna get into that in a second. Good morning, y'all. Welcome back to another YouTube live stream and another episode of The Morning Show. I'm your host, Classy Beats of ClassyBeats.com, patreon.com/ClassyBeats, by the way. And we're gonna have a great show for y'all today. We're gonna get into the snowplow shooting here. We're gonna cover what's going on with Jason Levesque and get more into the testimony there. We've also got some breaking news when it comes to Tony Busby, Jay-Z, Alex Spiro. These guys cannot let up, and they're still going back and forth at it. But before I get into the show, I gotta say what's up to the people, man. Good morning to y'all. Of course, as many of y'all know, it is March 17th, which means it's Amy's birthday. Happy birthday to the awesome, amazing Amy. Amy, thank you for not only being here, for being a part of the community, but just for being the amazing person that you are. I hope you have a very, very happy birthday, and that God blesses you with many, many more. I'm so thankful for you. Thank you that you're here, and I love and appreciate you, Amy. Y'all drop the happy birthdays in the chat for Amy. Absolutely amazing, and that's an understatement at everything that she does. So glad she's here to celebrate her birthday with us. Oh yeah, we looking all crispy and clean on the screen. Did I miss it? Shh. I'm getting rusty, y'all. We looking all crispy and clean on the screen. I appreciate that. We've got Jay Buckmaster in here. A Fitz is in the building. Michi's in here. Good morning, Valencia. Amy in Texas is in here. Cat Daddy's in the building. We got Nosy Rosie. Good morning, y'all. We've also got, did I miss? Oh, I missed a couple of y'all. Axel Wheel is in here. Shout out to Axel Wheel. We've also got Gerald is in the building as well. Thank y'all so much for being here. If you could, please make sure you like the video on your way in. I don't ask for much, but I do ask that y'all like the video. Not only is it free, not only does it help the show continue to grow, but it lets the algorithm know that you guys are enjoying the show, and it shares the video and the channel with more people, so we can get more people watching and having a good time, man. Shout out to we got Dawn is in here. Dawn Paisley's in the building. Good morning, Dawn. And I missed a couple of y'all too. Let me see. Miss 86 is back in here too, saying happy birthday to Amy. Happy birthday. We've got Tanya in the building as well. We've got Hilya is in here as well. Good morning. Good morning. All right, y'all. I'm not going to hold y'all hostage any longer because we do have a lot of documents to get into We've got a lot of legal documents to get into, and then we're going to go back into the coverage from the snowplow shooting trial as well. So let's go ahead and get into it. If y'all are ready, again, please make sure you like the video on your way in, and we'll get straight into it. So as many of you know, Jay-Z, Alex Spiro, and Tony Busby have been going back and forth. The lawsuit Tony Busby had or was representing by Jane Doe was dismissed. So that's gone, and it was dismissed with prejudice, which means it ain't coming back. That is the end of that lawsuit. So now we're moving forward. We're trying to smooth things out, finish the litigation. And then, of course, Jay-Z, he files a lawsuit against not only Tony Busby, but Jane Doe as well. So now this back and forth has been going on. We had some news come out that we covered here on the channel that there were actually some private investigators that went to Jane Doe's house. They got several statements from her. Not only did they get several statements, but they got her on record. They got a recording of Jane Doe's voice saying that Tony Busby pushed her to continue to include Jay-Z in this false lawsuit. I mean, the claim has been dismissed. So some people are out there, they're saying that it was dismissed for other reasons, but it's gone. It's never going to be filed again. So either way, so now that's where we are. We've got some new updates from Jay-Z's camp we're going to get into, and we'll also have the transcripts from the meeting, the full transcripts from the meeting that the private investigators had with Jane Doe. But let's go ahead and get into this here. Shout out to Megan Cuniff over on X. She's got the clip of this and actually provided us with the full document. She says Jay-Z's lawyers' new filings support their request to depose the woman who accused him of assault and her lawyer, Tony Busby. They're responding to Busby's lawyers saying the declaration from the investigators about Jane Doe shouldn't be considered. So basically, all the information they had from Ms. Henderson, from the other private investigator, they don't want that to be included or allowed in or considered in general. So we're going to actually go ahead and get into this full document here. And again, shout out to Megan for this. It's going to get interesting. So y'all hold on to your seats. So first off, we have the plaintiff, Sean Carter's reply in support of his ex parte application to the supplement the record in opposition to defendant's special motion to strike and lift the discovery stay pursuant to, and we have that here. All right, let's get to the table of contents. Oh man, I thought I was going to sneeze there for a second, but we're good. Thank God I was able to hold that in. Woo, that was about to be ugly. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. The introduction here. Defendant's opposition is misfocused on matters that will not become ripe until trial. The question for the court on a special motion to strike is not who will ultimately prevail. This is not a bench trial where the court weighs evidence and determines the credibility. To the contrary, the court must accept the truth of the plaintiff's evidence. The only question for the court is whether Mr. Carter's claims have minimal merit, i.e., whether a reasonable fact finder drawing all inferences from the evidence in Mr. Carter's favor could find that he has established the prima facie elements of this claim. Defendants' efforts to dispute those facts will consume roughly 80% of their opposition and declarations, and thus irrelevant to their pending motion. Similarly, the only questions posed by this application are whether the court should, 1, allow Mr. Carter to supplement the record with the evidence he has offered, including statements by Jane Doe, Tony Busby, and his colleague David Fortney about their claims, and Mr. Busby's incitement to get Miss Doe's claim that Mr. Carter was involved and what defendants would have learned about her from a cursory investigation. So basically, as I mentioned before, Tony Busby's side is trying to push to leave out all the extracurricular activities that took place between him and Jane Doe and the private investigators. They don't want that allowed in. But what is Alex Spiro and Jay-Z asking for here? Allow Mr. Carter to depose Miss Doe and Mr. Busby, including to refute matters that defendants put at issue through their assertion to the defense of the litigation privilege. So they don't even want to talk to Jay-Z, which is, it's going to happen. They're going to have to say something, man. So defendants are thus barking up the wrong tree and attempting to dispute Mr. Carter's proffered evidence, especially with their glaringly incomplete summaries of conversations they had with Mrs. Doe or how they supposedly vetted their claims, or whether she told them to serve the demand letters to sue Mr. Carter. All this was being claimed by Tony Busby. Again, Tony Busby was acting in on Jane Doe's behalf, and Tony Busby's alleging that no, she said she was sure Jay-Z was there. Jane Doe saying no, Tony Busby was the one that pushed me to include Jay-Z in this. So we got this whole back and forth. They want to get them separate, get them on the record, not some private investigator, not Tony Busby making a phone call to Jane Doe and saying, hey, did you tell them that I pushed you to do this? And she says, no, I didn't tell them that. After we heard the phone call of her telling the private investigators that. You got to get something on the record. It doesn't matter what their evidence might show if offered at trial. Nonetheless, between Ms. Doe's statements to the investigators, her 2 declarations filed after the hearing, and declarations from 3 of her now former lawyers about their conversations with her, the court can safely conclude that any privilege over the communications has been waived and cannot impede discovery into them. Basically, they brought up the conversations. Let's explore what those conversations were. Defendants have burdened the record with more than 100 pages of this material. They hope to either distract from what is genuinely at issue or justify their pathetic non-investigation of their client's claims. Dang. So are they including the Ava law firm in this too? I think they just said Tony Busby, but it seems like they're taking some shots at the Ava law firm too. Their reckless disregard of obvious facts that raised red flags about her mind-boggling assertion that Diddy assaulted her when she was 13, that Diddy assaulted her when she was only 13 while a well-known woman watched, and defendants ensuing exonerant and defamatory spree against Jay-Z. It matters not. As explained below, the investigator's evidence is admissible and compels the denial of the defendant's special motion to strike. So before we get into this, y'all let me know what you think. Will the judge allow this in? And also, will Tony Busby and Jane Doe be deposed and have to say something on the record? And who's going to represent Jane Doe if she does? Because I can't imagine Jane Doe showing up for a deposition by herself. Oh man, this lady just they need to let her go. Either way, the court should grant plaintiff's application. Defendants cannot ask the court to exclude the plaintiff's evidence on the grounds that their evidence conflicts with it. Defendants ask the court to exclude Mr. Carter's proffered evidence based on their view that it lacks probative value because their version of events is undisputable. But given the evidence before the court, by definition, the facts are not only disputable, they are disputed. Moreover, defendant's arguments has no place in the special motion to strike. At this stage, the court does not weigh evidence to resolve conflicting factual claims. Instead, its inquiry is limited to whether the plaintiff has stated a legally sufficient claim and made a prima facie factual showing sufficient to sustain a favorable judgment. Basically, they don't have enough to keep all this information out. Mr. Carter needs to establish only a minimum level of legal sufficiency and trialability. So he has to say, hey, Tony Busby had these conversations with Jane Doe. He's admitted to it. He's mentioned it in past motions. They've actually shown in legal documents that they had these conversations. We've got more information on these conversations. We want to present this as evidence. So the judge, you should allow this in. Tony Busby's side saying, no, we don't want to allow that in there. Mr. Carter, aka Jay-Z, he only has to establish a minimum level of legal sufficiency and trialability under Linder v. Thrifty Oil Company. The proffered evidence is probative of the matters for which he bears that limited burden and must be credited. I think it is. Y'all have to let me know what you think. Mr. Carter now has evidence that Miss Doe did not meet with Mr. Busby to discuss the case until December 11th. Alex Spiro and Jay-Z have claimed the first time she ever met with Tony Busby was right before she was going to do the NBC interview, more than 1 month after he sent the demand letter. A reasonable fact finder could conclude from this that Miss Doe could not have authorized him to send it, if what they say is true. Jay-Z now has evidence from Jane Doe's mouth that he did not assault her. And we saw this in the Henderson, I think I called her something else, in the Henderson declaration that we read. Mr. Carter also now has evidence from Miss Doe that Busby brought Jay-Z into it. And then the Henderson, again, the declaration, the private investigator said this is what happened. She further stated that Busby was the one that kind of pushed me towards going forward with him, with Jay-Z. And she clarified. And we're actually going to get into the full transcript of the conversation Jane Doe had with the private investigator. So y'all stick around for that. A reasonable fact finder could conclude that Mr. Busby orchestrated this entire episode. Yup. And when she sent the demand letter, he engaged in extortion as a matter of law. Sheesh. Mr. Carter also now has evidence that Mr. Busby's colleague, David Fortney, visited Miss Doe at her home on February 13, 2025 to convince her to dismiss her case against Jay-Z, and did so by telling her that Mr. Carter had threatened her life. That was a lie that Jay-Z threatened her life. Tony Busby dismissed, and it doesn't make sense that Jay-Z would threaten her, or maybe what she said was she felt threatened. I don't know what the term was, but we saw from the beginning of this, well, the ones who were looking at it objectively, Jay-Z was winning this, and this didn't make sense. Just as they say, and I love this term they keep using, a reasonable fact finder. As we are reasonable fact finders here, we were able to see the inconsistencies in Jane Doe's story immediately. And then after doing some research, after talking with people who were there at the time, like a Dennis Byron, it was easy to see that this claim was going to fall apart. So why would Jay-Z have to threaten her? That doesn't make any sense to me. But anyway, that's my opinion. That was a lie, they say. Mr. Busby dismissed the New York action the next day. We also know that 2 weeks earlier, Mr. Busby's lawyer had already told Jay-Z's attorney that Mr. Busby would be dismissing the lawsuit. Standard practice. A fact finder could conclude from that chronology that Miss Doe was just a pawn in Mr. Busby's plan to extort money from Mr. Carter. Dang. They are not minor details. Drawing all reasonable inferences in Mr. Carter's favor, the new evidence supports Mr. Carter's claims. As to the new evidence about Jane Doe's mental health, including hallucinations, 4 false accusations of assault, and her criminal record, defendants label it as mere mudslinging. How? It is not. It doesn't matter that Mr. Busby was not, as he sarcastically stated a few weeks ago, her psychologist. He was her lawyer. Before extorting Mr. Carter and publicly accusing him of assaulting a child, he had a legal duty to do more than take at face value an outlandish 25-year-old accusation told by someone with serious and self-evident credibility problems. They're preaching in here. Instead, Mr. Busby heard what he wanted and deemed it good enough for his sick plan for Mr. Carter. This new evidence confirms that Mr. Busby acted with reckless disregard for the truth. In fact, a simple search of Jane Doe's publicly accessible social media likewise revealed her history of mental illness issues. Including bipolar disorder, her chronic drug use, and hallucination episodes. So she must have been on social media doing those TikToks. Y'all see them, where people talk about what mental illnesses they're suffering with and how it affects their life. I haven't been able to find her social media, but I'm sure it'll pop up at some point once we find out her name, which is coming soon. And that was also stated in paragraph 3 of another declaration. And a search of Miss Doe's publicly accessible case file from the custody case filed by the father of one of Miss Doe's children reveals that she admitted to falsely accusing the father of assaulting their child to obtain a financial and custodial benefit. Yeah, this lady, they need to put this lady somewhere. And to think that she's raising kids, that's sad, man. Y'all pray for those kids. A fact finder could infer that Jane Doe was also willing to do that to Jay-Z. Similarly, A query to Jane Doe's father would have revealed that he never made the 12-hour round trip from Rochester to pick up his daughter at a gas station in the pre-dawn hours when she was 13. Speaking with Mrs. Doe's father would have also informed defendant that she is under the care of a psychiatrist, sees her monthly, and takes medication, all of which impact her decision making and memory. All right, so they get into the proffered evidence and explain again why it should be admissible. That's getting more into the legal side of things. And then they go on to talk about the new evidence and why it should be allowed in. We won't get into all of that, but I'll leave a link to the full document in the description. And y'all can also find this full document read in the Patreon as well. I'll be dropping the link over there. Let me know what y'all think about this in the comments and in the chat. Tony Busby, again, looks like he's been struggling with this thing since the beginning, went about it the wrong way. He knew better. And now everything is catching up to him. And we're going to get into a second. And in the next video, if you're watching this on the replay, what actually was said by Jane Doe to the private investigators in the full transcript. I'll see y'all over there. Wow. Shout out to the gang, man. We got over 500 of y'all in here, but there's 100 likes. So if we could just get, can we get half of y'all that are watching to like the video real quick? It takes 2 seconds. It's free and it really does help the channel out. So I appreciate y'all as well. Let me see what y'all are saying in the chat, man. We got a bunch of happy birthdays in here for Amy. Look at y'all showing love. We got the good mornings in here. Shout out to Queen Brielle is in the building. My guy Les Cleaver is back at it. Antoine Bishop's in here. Good morning, Taco Tuesday. Is it here a day early? Good to see you. And Law and Order NYC is in the building as well. All right, so if y'all are good, we're going to go ahead and keep it moving because I know you guys want to get into this transcript and see what did Jane Doe actually say. So let me go ahead and update this headline real quick and we'll go ahead and get right into it. So shout out to, y'all know, we're going to call her the Honorable Cat Knott Williams was able to locate this supplemental declaration. We're going to get into the full details here in a second, but this is very interesting because now we actually get to see the full conversation of what went down between the private investigators and Jane Doe. And now that's going to give us a little bit more insight into what she actually said, give us more context behind the conversation, not just a snippet of the audio, which was dope. So let's go ahead and get into it. Shout out to Cat Knott Williams. She said, all right, let's take a look at Jane Doe's recording transcript provided by the private investigator, Charlotte Henderson, in a newly filed declaration. This is in the Cali case Jay-Z filed against Tony Busby. And let's go ahead and get into it. This is going to be good. All right. So first up, we've got Sean Carter, obviously, versus the Busby law firm and Tony Busby. What are they saying? This is a supplemental declaration of Charlotte Henderson. Charlotte Henderson declares as follows. I make this declaration in support of the plaintiff's ex parte application in connection with the defendant's special motion to strike. Unless otherwise noted, I have personal knowledge of the facts stated herein. It's not hearsay, and if called upon to testify, I could and would competently testify thereto. She's licensed. She has a company with investigations. She's worked in the legal profession for over 40 years, including as a paralegal, and she's worked with attorneys her entire career. She's been a private investigator for 20 years, and as an investigator, she's interviewed a wide range of cases, including criminal cases, tax fraud, automobile accidents, and she's testified in court before. So she is, by every stretch of the imagination, an expert in this. She's interviewed hundreds of witnesses. Attorneys who have engaged with me have filed dozens of my declarations in court proceedings, and that conveyed what the person I interviewed told me. Never has a court found that I acted improperly, applied pressure, coerced a witness, or anything of the kind. Never has a court refused to admit or stricken a declaration from me attesting to what I heard a witness say. I've never been disciplined or had my license suspended. Hey, so she's doing better than Tony Busby. If y'all can't tell, I can't stand that guy. Anyway, we'll keep it moving. When interviewing Jane Doe on February 21st, 2025, I conducted the interview I conducted the interview consistent with the high standards for which I was trained as a licensed investigator and that I have observed through my career. The interview of Mrs. Doe was lawfully recorded, given that Alabama is a one-party consent state, and transcribed. What does that mean? Jane Doe did not know she was being recorded. It is what it is. A true and correct copy of the transcript of the interview is attached here too as Exhibit A, redacted where Mrs. Doe's true name appears. Come on. I've reviewed the transcript and the recording and confirmed the transcript accurately reflects the recorded interview and that the recording accurately reflects the conversation that I and James Robert Butler, another investigator who was present with me, had with Mrs. Doe on February 21st. I was provided with and reviewed the second declaration of Jane Doe in response to Sean Carter's proffer. We're going to skip through that. That's cool. We don't really worry about that. In the following paragraphs, I identify her disputes with my declaration and necessarily with what she said during our in-person conversation. I clear the record about what she said to me and Mr. Butler. In paragraph 8, which we'll get to, of Mrs. Doe's declaration, she claims that she told both me and Mr. Butler that we needed to leave as soon as she had figured out who we were. So she probably lied again. We're going to get into it, y'all. We've got the full thing here. In claiming that she told us to leave, Mrs. Doe is lying. As the transcript of our conversation confirms, not once in the entire 15-page transcript does she tell us to leave or use any words to that effect. Rather, as the transcript reflects, Mrs. Doe spoke openly and willingly with us and freely answered our questions. She was free to leave, go back inside her home at any point and end the conversation. She chose not to. People say, oh, she was scared. She was upset. Stop it, young. Let's come on. In paragraph 9 of Mrs. Doe's declaration, she claims that she never told me anything about the facts in paragraph 9C of my declaration, which states, Mrs. Doe met with Tony Busby for the first time in Houston, Texas. He paid to fly her there. Their meeting to discuss the case took place when Miss Doe flew out for an interview that Tony Busby had arranged for Mrs. Doe to give NBC News in Mr. Busby's office. So again, this is the second time, or probably the third time by now, that we've confirmed that Tony Busby set up that horrible NBC News interview. I don't know why. I cannot imagine why Tony Busby wanted this lady to go up there and not only tell her story, but she gave incorrect information. She then backtracked during the NBC interview and said, well, maybe I misremembered. NBC got in contact with her father and he said, if I had picked her up, I would have remembered it. Tony Busby, this did not go the way he thought it would, clearly. Shout out to Amy for Tony Busby. In denying that she said that to me, Miss Doe is lying. As the transcript of our conversation confirms, Mrs. Doe told me he flew me out to Houston. He paid for it. The first time I met him was in a coffee shop in Houston. We talked about what all was going to go through, or what all I was going to go through, I guess, and what all had happened. Mrs. Doe's father said to me, Mrs. Doe further said to me, Tony, which I understood in this context to refer to Tony Busby, set up the interview with NBC that took place in Tony Busby's office in Houston, and that it was the same time he flew me out as when they met in the coffee shop. In paragraph 90 of Ms. Doe's declaration, she lies again. She disputes that she told me that Mr. Carter did not assault her. Ms. Doe is lying. She told me that several times. As the transcript of our conversation confirms, Ms. Doe made the following statements to me about Mr. Carter during our conversation. What did she say? Jay-Z had nothing to do with this, correct? Right. Other than he was at the party that you were at. So, I mean, he did not assault you? No. He was just there, but he didn't have anything to do with any of the assaults towards you. It was strictly, she said, yeah. Charlotte Henderson says, Yeah. And we're not dismissing the fact that something happened to you that has nothing to do with, but we just want to clarify that Jay-Z did not have anything to do with it and that he didn't assault you. And James Robert Butler says, is that a fair assessment? And she said, yeah. Now, those are very vague answers and seem pretty easy to dispute, but obviously they're showing throughout this that Jane Doe lied. So let's actually get into the transcript here. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit so we can find the full transcript. They left out her name here as well. So this interview took place on the 21st of February. All right, y'all. So this is Exhibit A. Here we go. We've got bird chirping, footsteps knocking on the door, dog barking. We're setting the scene. Oh, this is exciting. All right, here we go. Obviously, this is Jane Doe. Hi, how can I help y'all? The private investigator. Hey, how are you? Good, says Jane Doe. Miss Henderson says, uh-oh, puppy. I guess she was in the way of a dog. Can you step out for a second, or can you... I don't want him to bite us. She's got a dog there. Jane Doe says, oh, he doesn't bite. Charlotte Henderson says, okay. Jane Doe, how can I help y'all? James Robert Butler says, how is everything? And she says her first name. And she said, Jane Doe says, yeah. James Robert Butler says, how you doing? My name is Robert. This is Charlotte. We just came to kind of talk to you real quick, kind of run a couple things by you. We just wanted to see what was going on. I know there's kind of a court case going and it has since gone away. Jane Doe says, yeah. Mr. Butler. So we're just trying to figure out what happened with that. We're actually thinking that you might have been taken advantage of a little bit by maybe an attorney, Tony Busby. Does that sound like something? Maybe that? Jane Doe said, hold on, who are you guys? Charlotte Henderson says, we're not here to hurt you or anything. We just want to talk. That's weird that she would say that. I'm not going to lie. Why would she say we're not here to hurt you? So maybe Jane Doe looks scared or worried. Jane Doe says, how did you find out where I am? How did you find out who I am? Mr. Butler says, well, based on the interview and all the paperwork that we've got, it was all kind of pieced together. But listen. And Charlotte Henderson says, you're going to remain a Jane Doe, so you don't have to worry. We're not going to leak your identity. Oh, well. Mr. Butler, very simply, they don't want your name to come out at all. There's kind of okay with that, with you being a Jane Doe. But obviously, now that everything's been dropped, they want to clear everything and make sure that, basically I had a few questions. We want to clear things up. Jane Doe says, okay, Mr. Butler, hoping that, again, if you cooperate and kind of tell us what's going on, everything remains a Jane Doe. We don't tell anybody who you are or what's going on. Nothing. Oh. This sounds like a threat. I don't know about y'all, but it kind of sounds like Mr. Butler's threatening her a little bit, saying, hey, if you talk to us, you can still remain a Jane Doe. We just want to know what happens. If you don't talk to us, maybe your little puppy there might be in trouble. I don't know. This sounds like a veiled threat to me, Mr. Butler. I don't like it personally, but hey, we'll keep it moving. Apparently, according to Mrs. Henderson, they were doing everything by the letter of the law of investigators, so we'll keep it going. Jane Doe says, okay. Mr. Butler says, so a couple of quick questions was, how did you end up approaching the attorney? Or did the attorney approach you? Or how did that work? Jane Doe said, something I saw on Facebook. Mr. Butler says, you saw what on Facebook? An ad. Do you mind if we just that barking? All right. I'm sorry. Mr. Henderson. So he's getting annoyed at the dog. Miss Henderson says, it's okay. Jane Doe says, I'm just curious as to how y'all found out, or figured out who I am and where I am because they said they wouldn't release it even. Oh, she's getting mad at Tony Busby. Mr. Butler says, so they kind of didn't, but just in the interview and some of the things like when you take 4 little pieces of things and you add them together, we narrowed it down, or maybe 20 or 30 people. And then eventually just doing background checks and Facebook and everything kind of matches. We put the pieces together. We're investigators. That's what we do. And Charlotte says, and like I said, we still want you to be anonymous. Jane Doe says, okay, everything was Jane Doe. And that's exactly the way it's going to remain. But we just have a few questions. Okay. Mr. Butler says, so you found what? You found a lawyer or you found something on Facebook? Like, well, I found something on Facebook for the Ava law firm and they put me in touch with Tony. And then that's how it went, which is the story we're hearing from all 3 sides. Tony, says Mr. Butler. Busby, says Jane Doe. Mr. Butler, okay, so that's who you contacted first. Did you ever meet him? Talking about Tony. And she says, yeah. Mr. Butler, oh, okay. We're just double checking because I know there were a lot of people who work in his office. Jane Doe says, yeah, no, I met him. He flew me out to... Mr. Butler says, Houston. She says, Houston. Okay, so you went and saw him there? Did you go by yourself? Yeah. Okay. Did he give you money to pay for the trip or did he just reimburse you? No, he paid for it. He flew her out there, says Charlotte. Mr. Butler, right. So he did pay. Okay. Since the situation, have you been paid at all for what's going on? Now, when you first talked to him, was he promising you anything? Or did he help you with your story? Or you got your story on your own? Like, what was the initial meeting with him like? Mr. Butler is not great at asking questions. Jane Doe says, the first time I met him was in a coffee shop. Miss Henderson says, out here or in Houston, Texas? Jane Doe says in Houston. Okay. So you met him and did you go through each steps or he just sat down and you just talked? We talked about what all was going to go through, what all I was going to go through is I think what she meant to say, and what all had happened. Okay. So something happened or did he tell you what happened? Jane Doe says, no, he didn't tell me what happened. Something actually happened when I was 13. I ran away and I ended up there. Miss Henderson said, but did it involve anybody that you named? It involved Jay-Z and Diddy, but not the other 2. What? The other 2? I thought there was just 3 of them. It involved Jay-Z and Diddy, but not the other 2. So there's Celebrity B, but who's the 4th person she's talking about? Oh, this lady. Oh my gosh. All right. Butler says, okay. Why did it now get dropped then? Jane Doe says, cause I was too scared to go forward with it. They told me he was threatening to kill me. Jay-Z was threatening. Miss Henderson says, who told you that? Jane Doe says, they told me Jay-Z was threatening to kill me. Mr. Butler says, who? Who told you that? The lawyers. The lawyers did? Busby? Yeah. He said that there were threats against my life and that saying anything else could get me in a lot of trouble. That he could come after me. Oh, man. What? Tony Busby was lying too. Well, I can almost promise you that's not accurate. That's probably what. So the problem is them going forward. I think they were facing a lot of repercussions from it. And I think they might have tried to talk you out of just getting rid of the case. She says, okay, whatever. So now I know you had the military service. How come, what happened to the military service that you kind of left early? I got injured. Oh, she was in the military. Oh, they're giving giving up some more of information about her. You got injured. We saw some of your Facebook stuff that said some of the issue you now have is from the military. All right. So as far as you're concerned, the whole story you gave is accurate. She says, yes. They just talked you into dropping the case because now, well, I'm not going to say they talked you into it, but they kind of told you that. Jane Doe says, no, they talked me into dropping the case. Oh, Mr. Butler says, okay. And you were not planning to drop the case? Did they ever promise you money or just said, we'll see what happens? Or, well, they said that I would get a payout, but I already knew that was not 100% accurate. Miss Henderson says, did you sign an agreement or anything? Any kind of retainer? Like when you retain them to handle the case that they would get 50% or you would get 50? Yes, it was. I did sign something like that. Okay, that they would get it. Okay. And then when they dropped it or when you dropped it, did you have to pay them expenses or anything? Okay. No. Okay. So you haven't paid them anything and they haven't paid you anything. Okay. So you honestly believe, and I don't know the entire story of what happened when you were 13, why you ran away and yada, yada, yada. But JD, what is this?
Hey, yo.
JD, I mean, Jay-Z. Yo, Charlotte, what you got going on? Chill out. JD, I mean, Jay-Z, they honestly, and you feel like they assaulted you? Mr. Butler said, we don't know. It was more Diddy, but Busby brought Jay-Z into it. Uh-oh. This is what they were talking about. Mr. Butler says, see now, okay, if you don't mind, can you explain that? Because that's the kind of, he asked if Jay-Z was there. I said, yes. Mr. Butler says, so when you originally sat down at the coffee shop, you told him that Diddy did something to you. Yeah, because it started out, it was just Diddy and Celebrity B, I guess. That's J-Lo, man. Hey, can we... It was J-Lo. Whose name is gonna fit here other than J-Lo? Is it Cassie? Maybe could fit there. It wouldn't have been Cassie back then. J-Lo. Who else? Who is this Celebrity B, man? It's killing me. And then Jay-Z came in. But not from your mouth? Yeah. So he's saying you didn't say it was Jay-Z. Mr. Butler, he asked you about Jay-Z? Yeah. But Jay-Z you're saying he was definitely there, but he had no part in it? Or he was just, Jane Doe says he was there. Amy says maybe Beyonce. Could Beyonce fit here too? I don't know. It's possible. I bet it was J-Lo though. Jay-Z was there, says Jane Doe. He was just there, but he didn't have anything to do with the acts towards you. It was strictly, Jane Doe says, yeah. Charlotte Henderson says, okay. Mr. Butler says, okay. And now we're talking about it was at a party or something like that, right? An after party. So he was just present at the party. Okay. So you only got into Jay-Z's name because he was asking you, and did he suggest that Jay-Z might have had some part in it? Well, he was the one that kind of pushed me towards going forward with him, with Jay-Z. With Jay-Z, Busby did? Yeah. Do you know why? No. He never mentioned it. Did he ask, like, why do you keep harping on it? Nope. Okay. Why did you do the interview with NBC? Who set that up? Tony did. Oh, God. Tony? Busby, she says. Busby, okay, so where did you do the interview? In Tony Busby's office in Houston. Okay, and he flew you out there again for that, or was it at the same time? No, it was at the same time. He flew me out. He called NBC and he got them there, and yeah. Okay. Okay, that's all right. Listen, we definitely appreciate that you're being honest.
Stop the cap.
Okay. Because like you said, again, when it comes to like Jay-Z, we're kind of on here on kind of his behalf-ish. Because we believe that he said, I don't even know what you know. Okay, I don't like this part because this looks bad. Why would James Robert Butler say that he was kind of there on Jay-Z's behalf when Jay-Z said that they didn't send them there? Or Alex Spiro through Jay-Z said they didn't send them there. This is Jay-Z, you got some explaining to do. Okay, that's all right. Listen, we definitely appreciate that you're being honest because like you said, again, when it comes to like Jay-Z, we're kind of here on kind of his behalf-ish because we believe that he said, I don't even know what, I had no part of that. And if you were pushed into saying that, that's something that's kind of worthwhile to us. Yeah, says Charlotte Henderson. You're here on Jay-Z's behalf? Okay, he corrects himself. Mr. Butler says, well, nah, not on his behalf, but basically, I know if we do this, we gonna get a little bit of, I had some time, thought I'd stop by and see what you were up to. Charlotte Henderson said indirectly, but Jay-Z had nothing to do with this, correct? Right. Miss Henderson says, other than he was at the party that you were at. So, I mean, he did not assault you? No. Miss Henderson says, would you be willing to give us an affidavit to that effect? And from what we were told, if you do an affidavit saying that this is true, they pretty much have said that they will remain keeping your name as Jane Doe all the way through. You will be a Jane Doe. They're a little more upset with, they think you're more of a victim. On that end of the case, that they took advantage of you and kind of made you say things that maybe were not accurate to make the case better. Right. To get them more money. She says, yeah. She's ready for them to get up out of there. So if that's true, that's something that's something we need to know. Because again, I hate to say it, you have children. They have children also. If one was responsible, that's one thing. One was not responsible. His kids, his wife, his family, now they're hearing that he might be responsible for something that nobody wants to be accused of if they didn't do it. Do you understand that? Yeah. I'm sure you can understand that. I mean, yeah. Nobody wants their kids thinking bad of them. Right. So would you be willing to help us as far as the fact that the things that you said about Jay-Z were not correct? We just want to set the record straight so that he's able to, so that we can move on and this can get out of his, being accused of this because, it didn't happen. Correct? Right? Correct? Huh? You get it? And she said, you have a good day, guys. Oh, dang. This sounds to me like a polite way to say, get off my porch. Jane Doe was done. Jane Doe was done at this point. She checked out. She's gone. And I think she checked out earlier in the conversation when she was like, how did you guys find me again? Charlotte Henderson said, hey, whatever your name is, come here. It's okay. So maybe she was upset. I promise we're not going to hurt you. We're not going to try. We're going to try and help you. We're not doing this to hurt you. This is all to help you. Believe me, What's wrong? Tell me, talk to me. Yeah, she got upset. And yes, this happened after the case was dismissed on February 21st. Yeah, if you have any concerns, tell us what they are, and we'll see if we can. Just talk to me. If Jay-Z didn't have anything to do with it, it's okay. But if he did, we need to know. I mean, I promise you, we're not here to hurt you. And like I said, we're going to keep you out of it. You're going to be a Jane Doe. We're just going to set the record straight. That's really the only thing we're here for. I promise. I don't want him getting mad at me. What? He's not. And I don't know where these threats, that came from Busby. And that never happened. Jay-Z never said anything like that. But you're saying he found me and you guys are here because he found me. I don't know that he found you. I don't know if he found you, says Mr. Butler. Like I said, we're going to keep your name as Jane Doe. We're just independent hires. What? Who hired them? Who hired them? So it wasn't Jay-Z. Who was it? Oh man, this is getting interesting. We're just independent hires by who? Like we just come to talk to you and try to set the record straight. That's all we're told to come here for. That's all we're told to come here for. And as long as you were honest and kept with it, they kind of said, we're going to get a lawyer to come. And a lawyer has nothing to do with anything. Have you sign an affidavit, set the record straight, and keep you as a Jane Doe. Just to kind of clear out, just clear the truth. Charlotte Henderson says, right. We just want to know that Jay-Z he was there, but he had nothing to do with your assault. And that's all. Like, we're not asking you to say nothing bad happened to you. We're not here to say that you're, just that. Yeah. And we're not dismissing the fact that something happened to you. That has nothing to do with, but we just want to clarify that Jay-Z did not have anything to do with it and that he didn't assault you. Mr. Butler says, is that a fair assessment? And she says, yeah. Okay, that's all. Miss Henderson says, that's all we need. That's all we want. And that's all we want to do is just ask you about that. And if you're willing to sign an affidavit to the fact that Jay-Z had nothing to do with it, and that's all it would say. It's not going to say anything else about anything else that happened to you that night. Just that he was not a participant. Then when they go forward, it's because they have a problem with other folks now. Because they're trying to make up things against their client, Tony Busby. So they're going to look to go after them. And they can leave your name out of it as a Jane Doe with cooperation because there's no reason to include you because we do think you're kind of a victim. We think they kind of took advantage of you. But how does this help me? I mean, that's a fair question. That is a fair question by Jane Doe. And I have an answer for you, Jane Doe. The answer is it helps you because if you sign this affidavit, then as they mentioned earlier, your name won't be released and you won't have to worry about your puppy. You won't have to worry about your kids being threatened, all this other stuff that's going to happen if your name's leaked and if people find out where you are and who you are. So it could help you in that way, but definitely talk to a lawyer about that. Mr. Butler says it keeps you anonymous. Here we go. See? And to be honest, it sets the record straight. Like I said, I don't think it's necessarily fair that some of his kids think that they did something that they didn't do. And I'd say, obviously he's very popular. you know, a lot of people think that he maybe did something really horrible. And if he didn't, we want to straighten it out. Jane Doe said, y'all have a nice afternoon. Miss Henderson said, can we call you? Nope. And that is the end of the transcript. Wow. A lot to unpack there. Y'all are going to have to let me know what you think about this in the comments and in the chat. This is insane. Now we get more details into how the conversation went. It doesn't seem like Jane Doe was really that cooperative. Honestly, it makes her sound like she's smarter than she seemed in that NBC interview and other documents released that we've heard from her. She didn't give them much information. She just answered with yes, no's. Yeah, Tony Busby pushed me to include Jay-Z. This is very strange though, especially I think the glaring fact in this is that the detectives say they were hired by somebody, which obviously they were, because private investigators aren't going to look into this stuff just for fun. They're not going to fly out to where she's at and just interview her for fun. So there must have been some type of incentive there. I want to know who hired her, because if Jay-Z and Alex Spiro are saying we didn't have anything to do with this, was it Beyonce? Was it Rock Nation? Maybe, which would make sense to me. Jay-Z's company would hire a private investigator, go find this lady. We're going to get PR. We're going to take care of this. We're going to get an affidavit signed, get your people over there so we can get out of this mess that we're in. It's wild, man. Either way, y'all let me know what you think about this in the comments in the chat. Wow. I want to hear the full audio. I think there's a reason they aren't releasing the full audio. Either they want to save it for court or they're going to release it at a later date. Most likely it's because they say her name in here a couple of times. So if she's going to remain anonymous, like they can't, in the first couple pages of this transcript, Mr. Butler says her name. So they would have to remove that out. Very interesting, y'all. Busby doesn't have victims' best interest, in my opinion, considering all the cases he filed so close to Gender Violence Act, and he can't practice there. This seems so unethical. Maybe, but that's the law. You can record somebody and not have their permission. I don't think anyone thinks TMZ has journalistic integrity. They're very good at your job. They're very good at their job. Has J-Lo been questioned? Nah, I think J-Lo probably wrote a check and she's staying out of this. She'll never be brought up. We won't need a body language expert to know he was lying. Watch Spiro claim Jay-Z didn't know who she was. Yeah, we watched that interview last week where Alex Spiro said, no, he doesn't know who she was. Let's see. I think Jane Doe has a history of pursuing falsely accused. Now 3 of the 4 dismissed cases. Not to mention she's done this to her own baby daddy or ex-husband. Yep, we just talked about that. Jane Doe has no credibility in my opinion. I agree. 1000%. Oh, there's Cat Not Williams. Shout out to Cat Not Williams who provided these documents, by the way. Shout out to the honorable Cat Not Williams in the building. She just gifted 5 memberships. If you got a membership from Cat Not Williams, please make sure you say thank you. Thanks for stopping by, Cat. And thank you for providing us with this transcript too. I know I mentioned to y'all earlier, Cat was the one who dropped this. So awesome. So great at what she does as well. So thank you for this, Cat. It's really interesting. I wish, Kat, you got to let me know what you think about this transcript. And actually, I'm going to drop, while we're here, let me drop the thread that Kat posted over on X. If y'all want to hear Kat's breakdown or insight into this transcript and what she was seeing, you can check it out in the link I dropped in the chat for y'all. She breaks down each part, a lot of the highlighted parts of this transcript, and really goes in depth on what she was seeing. So shout out to Cat Not Williams again. Y'all make sure you go subscribe. over to Cat Not Williams. Hit the notification bell over there. Watch every single video, every single ad, and show her some love. Like the video, comment, all that. Body language interpreter is on the same level as a palm reader. Jane Doe will fold during deposition. She has to be deposed. Has to be. I'm not defending Doe. I'm not defending Jane Doe. False claims make it harder for survivors to get justice, but perpetrators shouldn't get away with what they've done. Yeah, Jane Doe, she's the worst victim in the history of victims. Am I right? I think we could all agree on that. Out of all the victims Tony could have chose, you're going to choose the one that had multiple false claims dismissed against her, has a history of assault, almost got her kids taken away, and lied on her baby daddy. I mean, dang, this is the worst. This is the worst alleged victim in the history of victims. They could have picked somebody else. Good Lord. Then again, shout out to Cat Not Williams. Amy says, what if Tony hired people to appear they were from Jay-Z to cover his tracks? That doesn't make any sense, because he hired somebody to get the interview, and then he files a motion to get the interview, to not allow the interview to be used as evidence. I'm not seeing it, but hey, anything's possible. I wouldn't put it past Tony, so I'm not going to count it out completely, Amy. You might be on to something there. Also, Amy with the cake on her birthday. Again, big happy birthday to Amy in the building. Y'all show her some love and tell her happy birthday. Cat Not Williams says, Amy, that crossed my mind. His ex, Claudia Brady, said he accuses people of what he's doing. Said he took her story about the investigator. Amy might be on to something. That's a good possibility, but Spiro was also lying when he was talking about who sent them. Let's see. What else are we saying? We've got Cat Not Williams says, I don't think Charlotte was a part of that. I think Busby's claim about others were some BS, because Jane Doe is shocked that she's found on February 21st. Yeah, she was not. You could tell when she was taken aback. She's like, who are you guys again? Who are you guys? How did you find out where I am? How did you find out who I am? Oh my gosh. Yeah, this lady was shook. And again, if you're not supposed to be found, if somebody showed up at my door and was like, and used my first name like they did here, how's everything, Candace? We're going to call her Candace. How's everything, Candace? I would have been like, oh, what? That's crazy. So again, Cat Not Williams on it. She was shook. Oh man. Ducky Dexter says, to clarify, if the case has been dismissed, who will she testify against? Diddy? If the case has been dismissed. So we're talking about a deposition because Jay-Z filed a lawsuit against Tony Busby and Jane Doe, and they want to get her on the record. So they want to get Tony on the record, they want to get Jane Doe on the record, and then they want to move forward with Jay-Z's lawsuit. So that's where we're at. No, I don't answer people who type in all caps. Oh, that's another YouTube channel. Yeah, Tisa. Shout out to Tisa. I shouldn't say other people's name, but shout out to Tisa Tells. Yep, she's a content creator over there as well. Giving her opinion, her side of things. But yeah, if y'all want to know her side of it, you can go over there and watch her content. I don't like commenting on other YouTubers unless I know them and they're in the community, like Cat Not Williams, because that can just start stuff. So if y'all want to know Tisa's side, you can go check it out over there. All right, so I had another part I wanted to get into, and this was sponsored by Megan Cuniff. Let me see how long this is, because y'all might be tired of me talking. We might need to get into some video. Oh, Alex Spiro. Should we get into this? Y'all let me know what you think. Okay, we're gonna take a soft poll in the chat. Do y'all want to get back into the Jason Levesque trial, or do you want to go through this declaration of Alex Spiro? Both of them are really good. We're going to get to the Jason Levesque trial here eventually anyway, but I want to know from y'all, do you want to do this declaration of Alex Spiro? What do y'all think? Jane Doe's case was dismissed, so Jay can do an investigation for his lawsuit. Yep, exactly. Check the other transcripts attached to that lawsuit. A YouTuber interview with Busby is in the court docs. Oh, interesting. Trial, both. Spiro. Oh man, y'all are fun. Y'all are funny. It's crazy that I have to do this. Anyway, both declaration of Alex. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get into this. Shout out to, let me change the headline here. We're going to get into Alex Spiro's response. Y'all know Jay-Z's not going to back down, and Alex Spiro is doing a great job representing him. And again, can y'all please make sure you like the video? I'm going to be begging for likes until they're at 100%. All right. So we've got a response from Alex Spiro representing Jay-Z into everything that's going on, the back and forth between Tony Busby, Jane Doe, Jay-Z and Alex Spiro. It's wild. We'll get into this here in a second. Let's see what Megan has to say about this. And thank you to Megan Cuniff for providing the document. She says, another highlight from the new Jay-Z versus Tony Busby filings. Jay-Z's lawyer, Alex Spiro, says Busby's lawyer told him if they proceeded with the defamation lawsuit, they would publicly state that Jane Doe feared for her life. Oh, man. All right, Tony, what we got going on? We've got a declaration of Alex Spiro. Let's get into it. Alex Spiro declares as follows. He's a partner of the law firm with Quinn Emanuel. I cannot pronounce that. And Sullivan. Okay, we know that. I make this declaration in support of the plaintiff's reply to his ex parte application in connection with the defendant's special motion to strike. Unless otherwise noted, I have personal knowledge of these facts and stated herein. And if called upon to testify, I could and would competently testify thereto. On or about November 5th of last year, I received a copy of an extortionate demand from defendant Tony Busby had made to Jay-Z through a letter falsely accusing him of assault of a minor, Jane Doe. When Busby sent this extortionate demand to Jay-Z, I became aware that it was coupled with Tony Busby's frequent media appearances. Y'all saw the 1-800 banner. Oh man, regarding the alleged participants in Diddy's criminal enterprise, Tony Busby's public threats to unveil famous names, and Tony Busby's threat to bring criminal charges against these alleged famous participants. And you know, one of the biggest, the telltale signs for me at the beginning of this whole thing was when Jay-Z said, file those criminal charges, file them. Please, I beg you. I'm waiting here. I'm not scared of criminal charges. You know why? Because I didn't do this. And turns out Jay-Z standing 10 toes down. It was worth it. Jay-Z never paid Tony Busby or offered to pay him a penny in response to his extortionate demand or the Jane Doe lawsuit. As a result, on December 8th of last year, Tony Busby followed through with his threat and named Jay-Z publicly in the case of Jane Doe versus Diddy. On January 8th of this year, after the 21-day safe harbor period ended, I filed a motion for sanctions against Mr. Busby, seeking to dismiss the lawsuit pursuant to the Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 11. This was the first time I had ever filed a Rule 11 motion against another attorney in my career. Well, I think Tony Busby was well deserving of that. The Rule 11 motion raised two issues. One, Tony Busby violated Rule 11, obviously, by either filing a knowingly false complaint to failing to conduct a reasonable inquiry into the facts. All those were true. Busby failed to obtain admission pro hoc vice to participate in the Southern District of New York, and he's still facing issues from that, despite having signed numerous pleadings and other filings evading the court's jurisdiction and authority. I believe the number is 20 plus. 20 plus. Tony Busby, he signed 20 plus times without being admitted to the Southern District of New York. Absolutely insane. On January 28th, in the United States District Judge presiding over the lawsuit, Judge Annalisa Torres, shout out to her, in response to the issues raised in our Rule 11 motion, ordered Tony Busby to file proof of admission to practice in the Southern District of New York by February 14th, Valentine's Day, and Tony got no love. Tony got no love, man. He told Judge Torres, hey, Judge Torres, I'm trying. I tried to get in there. Hey, I've got admission to the Northern District of New York. Does that count? What a clown, this guy, man. Shortly thereafter, Tony Busby's attorney, Mark K, will say, reached out to me discussing dismissing the lawsuit. Yeah, they felt the heat, so they need to get out of the kitchen. I made clear at all times to Mr. K that Jay-Z would never settle the lawsuit or pay any money to resolve it, given it was a heinous false accusation. Mr. K also requested that he dismiss the case, which Jay-Z brought against Mr. Busby. I said, oh, I wish you would. In light of Mr. K's settlement that Busby was going to voluntarily dismiss the lawsuit, which achieved the same result we sought through our Rule 11 motion, I told Mr. K that we would hold in, further pursuit of our motion without prejudice pending Tony Busby's dismissal of the lawsuit. Given that we had at that point achieved the purpose of bringing the Rule 11 motion, the motion was about to become moot. And given the repercussions of Tony Busby's failure to seek admission to the Southern District of New York, was still an active issue for him in the many other lawsuits he filed there. Our withdrawal of the Rule 11 motion without prejudice was an insignificant event. Mr. K's characterization of our withdrawing as being done in furtherance of a negotiated dismissal of the lawsuit is not correct. In fact, Mr. K acknowledged in writing that this was not a settlement. Basically, what Alex Spiro is saying is Tony Busby messed up. He wasn't admitted in the Southern District of New York. They had an idea, that this case would fall through and that they were going to have conversations about it being dismissed anyway. There was no point to keep the Rule 11 motion in place. Makes sense. And then he's saying Mr. K spun it and said, we had some great conversations and we just came to this agreement that they would know. You didn't get a win out of this, Mr. K. Your client messed up. And then he paid you to come in there and clean up his mess, which, they really didn't have to do much other than dismiss it. It's insane. It was my understanding that with the Rule 11 motion pending while Mr. Busby dismissed the lawsuit, that would bring further attention to his ethical issues, and they are many. On February 14th of this year, Valentine's Day, Mr. Busby dismissed the lawsuit with prejudice. A copy of that was filed with the court as a part of our opposition to this motion through the February 18th request for judicial notice. The swift dismissal with prejudice of the lawsuit just 2 months after naming Jay-Z was a resounding victory for Jay-Z and a clear indication, and Diddy as well, and a clear indication that the allegations in the lawsuit were false in the first instance and that the extortionate plot by Mr. Busby had failed. Mr. K, the cleanup man, requested that we cease any you know who Mr. K reminds me of? He reminds me of Adam Abadi. Yeah. Y'all remember during the YSL trial how things were just going to shit. Miss Love was crashing out. She was giving dirty looks to the cameraman. Miss Hilton was over there telling people to complain to Judge Whitaker so they could get the live streams taken down. And then here comes Adam Abadi in here to save the day. Fanny sent him in there. She's like, man, can we just get this over with? Get Thug a deal. Get all the remaining defendants a plea and can just finish it up. Mr. K is Adam Abadi because this guy is up here fixing everything. Shout out to Mr. K. Mr. K requested that we cease any investigation into Tony Busby or his law firm. Yeah, right. A topic about with which Mr. Busby was obviously concerned. Mr. K conceded there was not an admission that either my firm or Jay-Z had engaged in any investigations and wrote in an email, neither you nor your client is admitting that you have done or know about it. It is my understanding and belief that this request was motivated by Tony Busby's concern that investigators would reveal that the way he handled other cases was consistent with how he handled the case against Jay-Z, and that he had a pattern and practice of engaging in extortion, defamation, and other illegal conduct. Also, another side note, I saw the other day that Deshaun Watson just got engaged. I wonder if he's going to go back and maybe look at his case and look at the judge's ruling on this and see if Tony Busby had some issues while that was going on, because apparently Tony Busby was the one who handled everything in Deshaun Watson's case. If what they're saying, if what Alex Spiro is saying here is true, and Tony Busby was afraid that once these investigators started digging, they would find something that he didn't want them to find, could that apply to Deshaun Watson? Because if so, oh my gosh. I mean, Deshaun Watson's football career was completely altered and changed because of that lawsuit Tony Busby won against him. Interesting side note. Anyway, Mr. K request regarding ceasing investigations into Tony Busby and his law firm in no way implicated investigating Jane Doe herself. Rather, this was a request concerning other investigations into Tony Busby's practice. Mr. K's description that there was an explicit agreement that no contract he made with Jane Doe is not true. He never mentioned that to me. There was nothing improper with those around Jay-Z seeking to speak with Jane Doe regarding what happened. Okay, so Alex is saying, yes, Jay-Z's people had Jane Doe investigated. That's what this sounds like. But Jay-Z didn't personally know about it. He didn't ask for it. He didn't do it. Now, could Jay-Z have said, oh yeah, he was on the phone with his personal assistant and said, man, you know, I just wish this would go away. I wish there was some way an investigator could go and talk to Jane Doe and maybe find her. Maybe, I don't know, they could get her to sign an affidavit. Oh man, what a mess this is. All right, so let's keep it moving. There is nothing improper with those around Mr. Carter seeking to speak with Mrs. Doe regarding what happened. I've listened to the recording and reviewed the transcript of Mrs. Doe's conversation with Mr. Butler and Mrs. Henderson. It is a 15-minute casual conversation and, in my opinion, is a modest step to take when someone very publicly and falsely accuses another of assaulting a minor. Yeah. Based on my longstanding relationship with Jay-Z, it is my belief that the false accusations of assaulting a minor damaged Jay-Z, and Mr. Busby's actions taken against Mr. Carter, taken against Jay-Z, damaged him. Jay-Z, and we saw in another I don't want to say it was emotion. In another legal filing, Jay-Z said he lost a multi-million dollar deal because of all of this that's going on. I mean, he lost a lot of money. Jay-Z did not ask for any of this, and it is only Tony Busby that set these events in motion through his extortionate scheme. After my colleagues appeared on behalf of Jay-Z in this court on February 25th and raised filing the instant ex parte application on February 28th, Mr. K indicated that if Jay-Z moved forward, Tony Busby would publicly state that Jane Doe was in fear for her life. Ow! More extortion. Mr. K did not say that Jay-Z or anyone acting on his behalf had threatened Ms. Doe's life, and it has never been alleged that Jay-Z did so. He said only what Tony Busby would publicly claim if Jay-Z proceeded. There is no truth to the allegations that Jay-Z threatened Jane Doe or her life on March 31st, 2025. I checked the docket in New York in the New York lawsuit and the filings that my firm received to whether either the November 18th or the December 8th affidavit signed by Jane Doe and included as part of Tony Busby's supplemental declaration in opposition to the ex parte application were filed in that lawsuit. Neither affidavit was ever filed. Attached as Exhibit A is a true and correct copy of the docket printout in the case from the EFC Pacer file for that matter. Wow. And I declare under penalty of perjury under the laws of the state of California that the foregoing is true and correct. Executed this on the 14th day of March in New York, Alex Spiro. Of course, I had to sneeze right at the end. Oh man, what do y'all think about this? In the comments in the chat, let me know. It is clear that Alex Spiro is saying not only was there some shady stuff going behind the scenes, but as mentioned by Megan Cuniff, Tony Busby and his people and Mr. K, the cleanup man, threatened Jay-Z and said, hey, we're going to have to do some things if y'all keep moving this way. Let me know what y'all think about this in the comments and in the chat. Wow. Shout out to the gang. Appreciate everybody who's in here. Y'all give me one quick second. I got to take care of this. And I'm going to read some of y'all's comments.
I can do what I want when I want to do it. I can do what I need when I need to get through it. When I need someone else, can't be too proud for help, but gotta look after myself. Sometimes it can get lonely, never living in the moment. When the sun is shining, hope that I'm reminded, like how the clouds keep changing. I'm always steady rearranging, going back to the basics of what a good day is. What a good day is. And that's exactly what the day is.
All right, we back. We back in here, y'all. Boy, this was wild, man. This I remember when this first started. We said this was going to be a battle for the ages. And I know Kat Not Williams in the chat. I think Kat was excited, just as excited as I was about this back and forth between this lawyer battle. And we're still getting a lot of juice out of this. So shout out to the gang. Oh, Dottie's in the building. Shout out to Dottie. Hope you're doing well this morning. Hope you feel better too. Definitely been praying for it. I love you. I appreciate you too, Dottie. And I hope you have a great day. Shout out to Amazing Grace. Kat Not Williams says the NFL has slowed down on how quickly they react since then. Well, and then of course, Kat Not Williams, with Rock Nation having such a big part of the entertainment side of everything going on with the NFL. In this case, they in this case specifically, they were going to take their time, especially considering how much of an investment they had in Jay-Z and Rock Nation. But I saw recently there were a couple of cases. I know there was one NFL player who's been out of the league for a while because of false accusations against him. And now it came out that everything that was being said about him was false. The girl he was with and was accusing him was held liable, and it's just a whole mess. So it's still the NFL going NFL, but I definitely get what you're saying there. Yeah, Busby never bothered to get licensed because he assumed everyone was just going to fold. Great point, Melody. Great point. I don't think I've heard anybody make that point. That's a great, very well said. I think that's probably the case. He was just signing papers, sending demand letters, and sitting back and trying to count his money, and he failed. He picked the wrong one. Boy, man, he picked the wrong one. Catnot Williams says he made his lawyer partner to spend February 13th flying out to get papers signed. Dang, that's crazy. Did that really? If that happened, that's insane, man. They had the lawyer on deck. Oh my gosh. Well, let me see. If I were one of the supposedly many celebrity Bugsby claimed to have collected money from just to keep their name out of it, I would be contemplating on suing Bugsby. Well, here's the problem. Here's the problem with that, though. Not everybody has an airtight case like Jay-Z did. It was obvious for us to see here that that this didn't happen. The timing was wrong. Everything surrounding the events was wrong. A lot of people were arguing maybe it was 2003. Okay, whatever. We don't know. But this, as the claim as it was and it stood, there's no way that was true. With other celebrities who paid, there might be a little more there. There might be a little more there. And that's the reason that a lot of people are taking the stance of saying, and y'all see them in the comments saying, oh, well, Jay-Z's guilty of something. Hey, that could be true. Because there are a lot of parties that took place. There are a lot of events that happened, and there were a lot of people there. So some of them, they might be like, hey, listen, I don't know what Tony's got going on. I wrote the check. I get to remain as Celebrity B. Just, I'm gonna let it be what it's gonna be, and we're gonna keep it moving. What are y'all saying? Catnot Williams says, oh, I think Schwartz is my favorite attorney in the mix. Shout out to Fun Sizes up in here. Florida man and his domestic partner allegedly deleted a 16-year-old girl after luring her to the house on a dating app. Oh, Lord have mercy. Good Lord. Jeez. Busby boasts about exposing so many celebrities and he didn't. Y'all, we should go back and watch that press conference. I know we originally reacted to it here on the channel when Tony Busby first had it, but I honestly don't remember it at this point. I remember seeing Tony Busby and say, oh, dang, this man is serious. He is not out here playing. And then we came to see who Tony Busby really was, which is unfortunate. By the way, thank y'all for over 100% of you liking the video. I appreciate it. Y'all seriously do not know how much that helps the channel and helps us continue to grow. So thank y'all for taking 2 seconds to like the video. I won't bring it up again. I promise. Also tonight, y'all know we just hit 100K subscribers this year. We are going to be celebrating tonight. We're going to have our 100K subscriber celebration along with some awards we're going to be giving out to the community and some of the members who tune into the show for the Song of the Night Live. So make sure y'all tune in for that. It's going to be a great time tonight at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to listen to some great music. I'm going to open, where is my YouTube plaque? It's over here somewhere. I'm going to reveal and open our 100K YouTube plaque. I got it here in the box. I've been holding on to it. Can y'all see this? So I'm gonna open this live tonight. So y'all make sure you tune into the show tonight at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's gonna be a fun time. It's gonna be a good time. All right. So let's go ahead and get back into this trial. Let me update this headline as well. We're gonna see what's going on with our snowplow shooting. This one, man, I have no idea how this is gonna turn out. No idea how this is gonna turn out. Excuse me. So just to give y'all a little bit of background, now we're in the day 2 of this trial. Jason Levesque, he's been dubbed the snowplow shooter. Basically what happened, to give you a little bit of background, Jason is out there snowplowing his yard. Some neighbors see him, a guy named Kyle, sees him through the window, and it looks like Jason's about to push some snow up into his yard. Kyle runs out there, gets in Kyle's face, and says, "Hey man, you better not push that snow up in my yard." Jason's like, "Yo, dude, like, chill out. I'm just trying to snowplow. I'm gonna try not to push it into your yard. All right, we're cool. We're cool." Then, according to Jason, Kyle, the aggressor in this case, says, "If you push that snow in my yard, your family, and it's gonna be over." Jason's like, "Yo, man, you can't be running up in my yard talking like that." Kyle turns around, he leaves. Like, "What you gonna do about it?" And Jason says, "Okay." Jason goes to his truck, pulls out a you-know-what, empties the clip into Kyle. Kyle's laying on the ground. Kyle's girlfriend, longtime girlfriend, and daughter see the whole thing. They run out and they try and see what's going on with him. He's still alive. Kyle survives. Then Jason, after this, he goes to the police. He tells them what happened. He's been locked up since April of last year. Now he's on trial. We've heard the testimony from Kyle's daughter. We've heard the testimony from Kyle's girlfriend. Now we're going to get into the testimony from some of the first responders at the scene, what they saw, what they heard, and what went down. Y'all check it out.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, would you state your name and spell your name for the court reporter, please?
Yes, my name is Lieutenant Spencer Williams Hurley. My last name is spelled Williams Hurley.
Thank you. You've given us many hints and suggestions, but I'll nevertheless ask for the record. What do you do for work?
I'm a police officer.
And where are
He's
you
an actor.
Currently, I'm a patrol lieutenant with the Rochester Police Department.
And I'd like to ask you to give just a brief overview, if you will, a summary of your professional training and experience.
Strictly regarding law enforcement?
Correct.
Okay. So in 2014, I got hired by the Rochester Police Department, went to the police academy, which is about 4 months long. During that time, I also ended up going to SWAT 1 and 2. I'm the SWAT team leader. And then along with that, I've gone to several medical courses regarding emergency trauma.
And can you describe your progression through rank? You just referred, I think, to yourself as a lieutenant, which is a different change in rank even from the April 4th of last year.
Yes. Yep. So initially when I got hired on, I was a patrolman handling all sorts of various calls, whatever those may be, from stabbing, shootings, assaults, domestic violence, and the normal things that you're familiar with. As a patrol sergeant, you get set in charge of whatever's happening on your shift. Right? So you're the ultimate catch for liability, legality, policy violations, things along those lines, and you're kind of, for lack of a better way to say it, the parent of the shift. Right? I think almost decisions will come through me. But as a lieutenant, it's even more so. There's much more of a legal aspect to it, as opposed to I'm no longer stopping cars. If that makes sense.
Could you just briefly revisit that? So how long were you stopping cars at patrol?
So I did that for about 6 years. I was a sergeant for about a year and a half, and then I became a lieutenant.
And to be clear, my understanding is patrol is a little bit more than just stopping cars. Did you respond to serious offenses over that period?
I've been through everything from attempted homicides, robberies, domestic violence cases, child abuse, child pornography, the litany of good and bad aspects of law enforcement.
All right. And not to get too far in the weeds and to frankly move on soon, you had mentioned to the jury that you had gone to the academy before you were hired. Can you just briefly summarize what that means in New Hampshire when an officer goes to the academy?
Yep. So at the time I went through the academy, again, it was 16 weeks. It was a live-in academy. Monday through Friday, you're there the entire time. Think of a less militaristic boot camp. During that time, we have training at all hours, both physical,
He loves being a
academic.
police officer.
We have basic first aid, we have more advanced first aid, as well as the investigation of crimes, crime scene management, crime scene processing, mental health, and basically all aspects of our job. Following that, you have the field training period where you're with a senior officer, and that's kind of when you hone those skills. in an
Give me
on-the-job
1
training
second,
kind of,
gang.
Environment.
And finally, in addition to kind of the strictly law enforcement training experience, do you have additional training and experience that is integrated with, parallel to, relevant to your work in terms of medical training?
Yeah, so prior to becoming a police officer, I was in the military. I was a Navy corpsman for 6 years. What the Navy corpsman is, it's a medical field for both the Navy and the Marine Corps. During my time, I was attached to a Marine Corps infantry battalion. I did multiple combat tours with that. That part of that training, we have a 16-week hospital corpsman school. That's where we learn our basic functions in the medical field for the military. Following that, there's an additional 8 weeks of assignment to go to the Marine Corps side of things. During that time, it is entirely battlefield trauma, right? So gunshot wounds, stabbings, explosions, tourniquets, chest seals, trying to keep people alive until we can get them to a higher level of care, like a field hospital or an air medevac. From there, I also went to something called Operational Emergency Medical Skills. That's a 2-week course where we have more or non-traditional methodologies for keeping people alive. I'm not going to go into the details of some of it, but it is a very advanced, it is very rigorous, and it is a very intense course where we have everything from your line level people that work in a hospital all the way up to high tier special operations that go through this course. It's a real eye opener for a lot of people. And the main focus of that is being able to keep people alive as long as possible, because if we look at the human body as essentially like a plumbing system, right? How do we keep those pipes intact, right? And running as best as we can. With that, I had multiple combat tours to both Fallujah, Ramadi, and places where there was an extreme amount of combat. As a result, seeing a large number of, battlefield type injuries. I've also taught it hundreds of hours. I probably taught tourniquets more frequently than I've made my own dinner in a lot of ways.
Jeez, this guy's still giving his background?
For, at this point,
good grief,
the last 16 to close to 20 years.
Sir, I'd like to turn your attention to April 4th of last year. Were you on duty?
I was.
And can you,
here we go.
Did you become involved in this case, which I think you're familiar with, as State versus Jason Levesque?
Yes, we were at the station. I was going over some of the information with my sergeants for how that shift had gone prior to that. And then that's when we heard the call come over both the radio and the overhead dispatch.
And briefly describe your response, if you would.
I found with the other sergeants that were with me that night, because some of them were in a shadowing period, and we headed directly to that call.
Well, we may see some body cams, so just can you clarify that shadowing period, what you're talking about?
Yep, so similar, remember how I said that after the academy, we go through a field training period. So when someone gets promoted from patrolman to sergeant, they'll spend a little bit of time with either a senior sergeant or a lieutenant, kind of just showing, think of it almost like an FTO period, but it's not about how to do the job, it's more about the nuances of that position, right? So who we're gonna be notifying in certain situations, the requirements of them changes from when they're a patrolman, right? It's more the overall scene as opposed to an individual task more often than not.
And I'm sorry for that kind of side piece there. I just want to return to April 4th. You said that you received a call. What was the nature of the call?
From what I remember, it said that, so someone had called in and said that there were 4 shots and that their boyfriend was shot in the face. And usually when a call comes in, we only get a little snippet of the conversation that person had either with a 911 dispatcher or with our dispatcher.
How quickly did you respond after receiving that call?
Instantly, a matter of seconds.
And do you know whether other officers responded potentially before you even?
They did, yep. So as we were leaving the building, you could already hear lights and sirens, well, the sirens, leaving the parking lot, heading in that direction.
Would you please offer us a narrative of the events, your actions that you took from this point moving forward, please?
Yep, so as soon as I got with my other sergeants, we got into the supervisor's vehicle. The drive was very short. We're talking maybe a quarter of a mile in reality. Light sirens as fast as we could, got over there. As I'm pulling up, I could see officers taking a man into custody at gunpoint. At that point, my focus is I have
That's what
two
I'm saying,
sergeants with
Michi.
me. I know exactly how they're going to handle this situation. I know that I have an experience in medical, and I'm going to take advantage of that at that time. So we had already kind of distributed tasks while we were driving up there, and then I immediately started looking for who may be with a potential victim.
Were you able to find who you later learned to be Kyle Violet at the scene?
I did.
Can you describe where it is you found it?
On the sidewalk, kind of between a snowbank, there's the height of the snowbank and the nature of the light, and there was a storm going at the time, was kind of hiding in a little bit of shadow, so at first I didn't quite register what was there, but I saw him laying on his back, head towards me, and I could see a fair amount of blood both on the sidewalk and on the snowbank.
Dang, Amy.
And
Jesus.
after identifying somebody clearly in need of medical attention, what did you do?
Started trying to treat. So putting on gloves at that point in time, because again, if I don't know that person, we have to provide basic, protection for ourselves as well. So I started applying gloves, and then at that point, part of the treatment is trying to expose the wounds as much as possible to see exactly what we're dealing with.
Were there other officers adjacent or assisting you in this process?
There were.
And can you then describe for us, just with a narrative, what it is you did, what it is you saw?
Yep. So when I started, right off the bat, the obvious injuries, there was a wound to the left side of the jaw, which was very clearly a bullet hole. It also looked as though the round might have been lodged higher up in the cheek. As I exposed the torso, I started seeing a couple different holes, one on the lower right abdomen, one on the left rib cage, one on the upper part of the body near the collarbone on the left-hand side. We started trying to see what we're going to do for treatment of that. I couldn't see anything clearly that would say an extremity hemorrhage that would be like a tourniquet or something along those lines. So the idea is, if you kind of look at the torso, when there's a bleed or there's a hole there, the idea is you're trying to plug that hole as quick as possible. So your gloved hand will go over something like that to prevent, one, oxygen from going into the cavity in case the lung collapses, and it also tries to prevent as much blood as possible from coming out. So if you think of it like a water balloon with small holes in it, you're trying to plug those holes as best as possible.
And
This guy's good at his job.
By my count,
Respect.
3, 4 wounds. Did you examine the lower part of his body? Were you able to do that at the scene, given the time and circumstances?
No. We were able to get a rough idea of how much blood might have been there, and there was nothing to indicate at the time an arterial bleed that would have needed immediate attention, as opposed to the things more at the realm of his lungs. I also knew that we had EMS fairly quickly on the way. He was laying in the snow at that point in time, so there is an element of keeping them out of the snow and trying to keep them as warm as possible, given the scenario.
Can you tell us about any actual steps, interventions you took medically to either stabilize or to address the wounds that you did see?
Yep. So right off the bat, as I said, we're trying to keep as much of the fluid in the body and as much air out of the body as possible. So right off the bat, you go ahead and cover those holes with a hand, gloved hand, things along those lines. When I lifted up his shirt and we started cutting away the shirt, I saw a hole under the upper collarbone. My concern at that point in time is directly in that area, you have the subclavian vein, which is like a garden hose vein, where if that gets nicked, it can actually bleed quite profusely. When doing that, I actually take my fingers, which are gloved, and stick them into the wound to try to feel if I can see if there's blood coming from a particular location. That's also a benefit, because it's kind of like the little boy sticking his finger in the well. We're trying to keep everything in there, and that's, frankly, a good way to do it. When we do that, I roll him over, I'm trying to check to see if there's any exit wounds. Again, at this point, we just know somebody was shot. I don't necessarily know the caliber. I don't know the power. I don't know if there is going to create an exit wound or if it's going to stay inside the body, so we're at least going to check. Didn't notice anything on the back, but that's also when we started noticing something on like the lower hip. Eventually, we also roll him over onto the side because he does have blood going into his mouth. I don't want him aspirating or bringing that into his lungs, so by allowing him to lay on his side as long as possible, it allows the blood to come out of the mouth and maintain an airway so that he can continue to try to talk and continue to breathe on his own.
At this juncture, while you were making these observations and interventions, are you making determinations about exit wounds and entry wounds, or not at this point?
Yes. So this is a constant evaluation. Again, this is one of those things that happens in the dark.
Y'all think he's ex-military?
A lot of things going on at one time that are kind of dividing attention. So it's a constant reevaluation. So one, are things that we are doing working? Also, are there new information that we're getting, such as locating an exit wound? Or from the time I got there to the time we are at that moment, has additional blood pooled up in the area. So it's a constant evaluation, both of those reasons, and then if we do something, which in one case we started putting chest seals on, which think of it like a plastic dressing, right? Nothing can get in or out of it. By putting those on, making sure that those are working as well and they're staying in place.
Shout out to our first responders, man.
Body-worn camera while you responded to this scene.
I was. It sits right here.
Is it on now?
No. Okay. No, but it does sit right there.
Sorry. Look, would seeing the images from your body-worn camera accurately depict some of these issues you've described and the degree and nature of these injuries?
Yes.
Your Honor, maybe?
Yeah.
We'd like to shift to it.
Sure.
So while we're doing that, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to read instructions because
All right, we got some instructions from the judge.
and I want to warn you that this video does contain some graphic images. But as you will be told at the end of this case, part of my instruction is going to be that you are not to decide this case based upon passion or sympathy or emotion, but you're to decide this case based upon the facts and the law. And to the extent that seeing any of this arouses any sympathy or passion or emotion, I'm going to ask you to set those feelings aside, and that you are not to rely upon any such feelings or sympathy or bias or emotion in reaching your verdict at the end of this case. Your verdict is to be based on the facts and upon the law. All right, and with that, we will begin now.
So, Your Honor, with the court's permission, may this witness step into the well?
Yes, and I will move myself.
Your voice seems to carry quite well. I want you to provide a mic, possibly this is the... This may be another situation, Your Honor, where the lights would help.
The counsel, because this isn't for ID at this point, correct?
I construed your order, Your Honor, as a full exhibit.
Well, my ruling was based on...
I understand. So foundation.
Foundation has not been established.
I understand, Your Honor. Thank
Thank you.
We can't really see the dash cam. I was hoping they'd show us some of it.
An initial still frame. Can you identify that?
Yes, so that would be Summer Street to the right. The victim sitting right there. That's the snowbank next to the
Victim, you just used the term right there. Can I, for the record, just clarify, it appears to be in the sidewalk area adjacent to both a house and a utility pole.
Yes.
Okay. And this is essentially, you just pointed out your body-worn camera, the perspective of you on this scene, literally the view from your chest. Counsel, I'd ask you to flow.
Sorry, can we hold on one second?
Can you stop with everything?
Thank you.
Counsel, do you want to make a record, or do you want?
No, I mean, I just want to make sure we're clear here. This is still ID that's being played to the jury.
Right.
The ID has
Very
to
well.
be stricken and
Correct. Before you go any further,
I understand. So, sir, does this appear to be a fair and accurate representation depicted by your body-worn camera?
Yes, this is the same
That
as.
body-worn camera, can you confirm the protocol in terms of preserving it for evidence?
Yes, so the moment that we finish up any type of call, we see a couple things happen. So when we shut this off, it asks us to save it as a particular type of file. So it could be accidental, a traffic stop, a case file, or something like that. I select case file because it's going to go into a case. And then when we get back to the station, it gets uploaded basically into the cloud, into our servers, and then we can assign that specifically to a case with a particular case number that has a unique identifier.
And did you take those steps in this case?
It did.
Your Honor, I move to strike the ID and move this video in as a full exhibit.
any objection?
with the same reservations and with the same instructions.
Understood. The ID will be stricken as a full exhibit.
Thank you. Counselor?
This judge is funny, man. Oh, we can see a little bit of it. Here we go.
No, I need you to stand just like that. Hey, hold on. I need you to...
Jeez, man, they got, oh my God, you two might get me for this. Y'all see all this, like the snow is red.
Yeah. Okay, you got another... I'm gonna get that. Yeah. Oh, sorry? Yeah, take it. Okay, do you have anything else on the front? Hey, I'm gonna roll you onto your back, okay? Move your legs, move your legs.
Hopefully they don't show too much. Might have to skip through it.
What else we got? So I'm gonna go ahead and keep this one covered. Okay? Abdomen back, bud. Got the abdomen as well. Right here. Yep. Let's go right here. Okay. Sorry, buddy. Sorry, right here.
Jeez.
Hold on, buddy. Can we get a little bit of gauze? So, do we have any gauze? Put on his head. Should guys have that? Hey, David, you got your leg? Can you go ahead and cut the rest of the shirt, please?
That's fine. Okay. Yeah, grab that. Grab that, Sarah.
I just need someone to start cutting the rest of his shirt. Okay? Yep. Man, you need to back up.
Get back there, don't
Back up.
stand by the building, please. I'm gonna stand by the building. Jason!
Stand back when you're... Hey, we're going ahead. We're helping you out. We're helping you out,
Stay as still as you
okay?
can, okay? EMS is on their way.
Make sure his head gets up to the side.
Just put your head to the side.
I hear a voice in the background and you directing to turn him onto his side. Can you explain why you were doing that?
Yes. So as you can see, especially from the beginning of the video towards this point, because he's laying on his back, that some of the blood is draining into his mouth. You can see when he starts to talk, it starts to kind of come down his cheek. My idea is when you roll him onto his side, it allows that to drain. Typically with chest injuries, we try to be careful with how we're going to be moving somebody, because especially if it's bleeding internally, we have to watch which way that blood is going to start flowing inside the body. So while
Thank God for first responders, man. Jeez.
Cutting his shirt off, I don't want to bring it to the side because again, you have a hook that's ripping his clothes. I don't want to accidentally hit anything. So as long as we can keep on his back, we're going to, and then once we start seeing a little bit of blood forming in his mouth, we're moving him onto the side in order to allow that blood to come out.
There has been, I think, some reference to packing injuries. I note that there was some attention drawn to the abdomen. What does that mean to pack a wound?
So when we start talking, especially when like the hips, the shoulders, and those kind of areas, something like a tourniquet's not going to work, right? It doesn't have an ability to squeeze the blood vessel against the bone to shut off blood flow. So we have to find alternative methods. When I first was able to lift the shirt up, and I noticed one of his collar, I see my hand move up, and I actually stick my fingers into the wound to try to do exactly that. I'm trying to provide pressure inside the wound to prevent from further bleeding. That's not a thing that I can reasonably continue to do for a long period of time, okay? Unless I followed him all the way to the hospital and the surgery room, that's not going to work. So the idea is that we would take something like gauze, right, or specifically something called combat gauze, which has an anticoagulant in it, or sorry, it actually has a clotting agent embedded in the gauze. And what we do is we pack it and try to fill that space up as much as possible to prevent that bleeding. Otherwise, if that bleed continues, it continues to form inside the body, pulling like a traditional internal bleed that you would think. And that might require, and that was always, requires surgical intervention to get it to stop at risk of continuing.
Yeah, that's no good. No bueno.
I'm gonna roll on this side as soon as that's clear. Okay. So I'm gonna roll. Yep. So I'm gonna do this and cover here. Go ahead, keep your mouth open. All right. Any blood, we're gonna go ahead and let it roll out of your mouth. All right, buddy. I don't see anything here. Go ahead, get your mouth open. Currently, I don't know.
How is his jaw?
Yeah,
He does.
that's okay, though.
He does sound
That's
military.
okay. See anything else here? Oh, hold on, buddy.
Try and stay still, okay?
So we have a push up to the upper chest,
And
one
the
under the
lower
hand.
abdomen.
We also have the lower abdomen.
No, please take care.
Wow.
Once you get your that one, you start setting up feet.
I have one.
Okay, ready? Okay, so that's that one. Yep, so we got one on the abdomen. There's one under my hand as well. My right hand, but it's covered up by the sweatshirt. Okay, is there just has one to the face. Yeah, there's one to the face and the jaw. Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna have Jess get over those two. What's in here?
I have some.
I guess my pocket.
He's too confident. Hey, stay with me, okay? Just stay with me, all right?
Can hear him trying to breathe. Man, that's tough.
Okay? So stay with us, okay? EMS is here, all right?
So can you with your left hand, can you go ahead and slide his arm out of the sweatshirt?
Ma'am, you need to stop asking us questions right now.
You gotta worry about hypothermia too. Jeez, man.
Upper chest, lower abdomen, and his jaw. His left side of his jaw. Turn your head for me.
So we're leaving him on the side, so you can cut that drain out. Okay. I don't see the accident move back at all. We haven't really checked the other side, but we have enough pressure with the one there, so I can get through. Right under my hand, there's one. There's one under the skin.
See me another. There's a chest right behind you. Right there. There's one extra in there. Right up. No left. Right there.
Yep. Right there.
And there's probably some stuff in there if you need it. Stay in your house, sir. Stay in your house. In the first aid bag on either the left-hand side or right-hand side. Stay, no, you're gonna be okay, all right? Just stay with us. They're here. They're gonna help you.
Wow.
You're gonna have to get on the drop. So we're gonna lift you, okay?
Okay, I'll hold hers in. So there's something on that arm. 1, 2, 3. You want to slide further down? His head's hanging off.
Jeez.
Cool. That's what we got right under it here as well. But there's nothing, I couldn't feel any kind of pressure coming from that.
Wow.
Thank you, Your Honor. Certainly, you may return to the witness stand.
First responders are amazing, man.
I'll ask it this way, you know, why did you do the things you did there in this instance?
To save his
They would have
life.
been medically necessary. If in a lot of those circumstances, especially the abdomen bleed or the upper chest bleed, one of the concerns that we have is like most things, when there's that initial impact of a high velocity bullet, right? The body does have a mechanism of self-protection, right? Muscles are going to, it's almost like when you hit your elbow really hard on the table, right? Because the muscle contracts. And what can that happen is that can prevent blood flow from going for a little while. But when the body starts to relax or you've lost enough blood, it then opens up like floodgates. So those kind of interventions are medically necessary to keep a person alive long enough to be able to actually get to a hospital.
I was going to ask, to what degree of medical necessity, but you just stated that this was to keep him alive.
Yes,
Do you consider that a fair assessment based on your training experience and what you witnessed there?
I do.
We just watched, I believe, the very end of that the video depicts you transferring this patient now to EMS, right?
Yes.
And at that point, did your involvement medically essentially cease?
Correct.
Can you just briefly summarize then your involvement following Mr. Violet being taken to the hospital?
Yep, I assisted in cordoning off the area. I contacted the support captain to try to get our detective bureau started to come out, because at that point, our main focus is scene security. I don't want anyone in or out. I want to preserve the scene as much as possible, and then pass it on to a higher level investigation, because the amount of time necessary to further this goes often beyond the capabilities of patrol, and we want to move it to our detective bureau.
Did you participate in or make any orders to protect the integrity of the scene?
Besides furthering or improving the tape barrier, nope. Sergeant Smith was able to handle the majority of that.
You're the first person to refer to the tape barrier, so can you just clarify that?
Yep, so it's just your traditional crime scene tape around the outside. The idea is we make it as large as possible because we can always shrink it after the fact. And that was one of the things that I had done, is make the scene larger to make sure we isolate as much of the original evidence as possible.
And following your efforts to communicate information on to detectives, secure the scene, did you play any additional role that night?
No.
And essentially, it sounds like you passed it on to the detectives. Did they show up?
They did.
Okay.
They better.
If I could just have a minute. Sir, thank you for your time. Attorney Sisti, I think you've met. You have some questions as well.
Thank you.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
First, I just want to say that was a really great job you guys did.
Thank you.
And
They did an amazing
your
job.
community should be really proud of you, honestly.
Thank you very much.
During the course of the emergency treatment there, and you explained it great to the jury, we were hearing Kyle say things to you. That's generally a very good thing to hear when you're in that situation, right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
He was responding to some of the things you were saying, right?
Correct.
What kind of things was he responding to, just so we can get a better idea?
Well, one of the main focuses is when we talk to people, one is to reassure them. That helps stave off shock a little bit. It also, you want people to continue to have the will to fight, to go further. So by constantly reassuring, you keep that interaction.
Yeah.
It also allows me to establish the integrity of his airway, right? Because if he can talk, I understand that at least something can go in and out, right? And then also, a lot of times what we'll do is people know where they've been hurt. So especially in the beginning of the video, you hear him repeatedly say, "My face, my face, my face."
Okay, so he was, thank God he was conscious and he was at least responding to some degree.
Yes.
He was able to articulate certain aspects of his injuries and point at that point to where he believed he was shot.
Correct.
And that was 7 minutes or so, and he was able to sustain, it wasn't a great level of communication, but some level of communication all the way until loading him onto the ambulance.
Yes, and that's pretty common, especially with gunshot wound victims in the torso, is they usually stay conscious.
Okay?
Yep.
Great. Thanks again.
Absolutely.
The fact that he could say the way he said it, I mean, we could hear it, the way he said, my face, does that change your view at all about the likelihood he would die if there wasn't serious medical intervention?
It's not so much exactly what he's saying, but it's how what he says changes over time. In the beginning, he was saying, my face, my face, my face. When he's rolled onto his side, it eventually changed to, I'm dying. And what that is as a big symptom of something called a tension pneumothorax, which is where the lung collapses and pressure slowly builds up in that chest cavity, which is one of the main reasons why we covered that wound to prevent air from going in, is this sense of impending doom, right? So this anxiety, because slowly you're losing the ability to take full breaths. You're not getting as
Losing
much oxygen.
consciousness.
You've lost blood, so you're not able to get it enough through your tissues, right? The perfusion of oxygen through your tissues. So what happens is it's a slow onset of anxiety that's very common with both bleeding out and with severe trauma where you're slowly suffocating to death.
Mm-hmm.
Those are my questions.
No, thank you.
Man, this guy's a police officer, man. Wow. Talk about going above and beyond. Thank you so much to all of our first responders, police officers, EMT, doing amazing work, man. I hope, God forbid, I ever need it. That if I call 911, a police officer like that responds to the scene, because this man is excellent at his job. Either way, let me know what y'all think about this in the comments in the chat. Not really too much to analyze there, but definitely interesting and brutal to see those injuries there. We're going to keep it moving here in a second. I want to see what y'all are saying in the chat. Oh, shout out to Kara up in here. Kara has been a member for 1 month. That is the wrong sound effect. Shout out to Kara for showing support. She says, it's Monday. Hopefully we all have a great week. Thank you, Kara. We definitely will. I appreciate you. Ducky Dexter says they saved his life. Thank you to the first responders. Yeah, man, I didn't realize Kyle was conscious when they got there. That's crazy. Y'all, he knew everything that was going on. Shh. Melody says, I fainted when my son got a small cut. I could never plug those holes as they described. Respect. Yeah. And if I had to guess, that's probably not his first rodeo. I think he's been here before. Either way, we've got some more detectives, and well, let me see. Is it detective? I need to put some respect on their titles. We have some more officers and first responders we're going to hear from here in a second as to what went down when they responded to the scene once they got to Kyle. So let's see what happened here.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state calls Officer Tiana Adams.
Officer Tiana. Yeah, that dude's a beast. But still, it's still free Jason though.
Officer, you're probably aware the witness stand is to the left of the judge. You can approach the witness stand, face the judge, and remain standing for your own, please.
It's still free Jason. Thank you, Jasmine.
You swear that any testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and the pains and penalties of perjury. You may be seated. How can you inquire?
Your Honor. Good afternoon, Officer Adams.
Good afternoon.
This may seem a little bit obvious, given both your title and what you're currently wearing, but can you tell us a little bit about what you do for work?
Yes, I work for the Rochester Police Department in the patrol division.
How long have you worked there?
I've been hired for approximately 2 years now.
2 years. So last April, around when this incident occurred, had you been there for a full year at that point?
On the road by myself, no. Hired almost, yes.
Okay, tell us a little bit about that. Can you just explain the distinction?
Yes, of course. So you go through a long hiring process, background checks, stuff like that, and that sometimes it takes a few months. Then you do some training in-house with the police department, and then you go to the academy, and you go through the academy for a period of 16 weeks, and then you do field training on the road with a field training officer for approximately 3 months, and then you get released on your own.
So I just want to clarify, because I think I may have gotten lost. I want to make sure we're all on the same page. April 4th of last year, were you on your own?
Yes, I was.
You were on your own.
Yep.
Thank you for clarifying. Was that a new development for you in your career, or had you been there for a little bit?
Yes, it was. I was on my own for maybe a month at that point.
Were you on duty and working on April 4th, 2024?
Yes, I was.
Do you recall what shift you were working?
I was on the midnight shift.
Of course, as a rookie.
Do you recall responding to the area of 41, 43 Summer Street?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you got called out to that press?
I don't recall who exactly called me. I just know that I went into shift early and was asked to head out to that address to assist with whoever needed assistance.
When you responded to the phone, when you got told to go out there, did you know the situation that you were responding to?
I didn't know many details, no. I knew that an incident had occurred and go touch base with one of the sergeants on scene to see where I was needed.
We all kind of visited a couple of days ago or yesterday the address is in question. How far is it approximately from the police station?
I don't know exactly, maybe a minute, not even response time.
Is it fair to say it didn't take you very long to get there?
Correct.
Once you arrived there, can you tell us a little bit about what you saw?
So I didn't really see 41 or 43. I went and touched base with my sergeant, and then my sergeant had me go do a different project.
So I just want to clarify, were you kind of on the street at that point? Did you get to the general street of Summer Street?
Yes, I did, yes.
Okay. And you said your sergeant did, I'm sorry, I just want you to, if you could repeat yourself on that. What did your sergeant ask you to do?
I went and spoke with my sergeant. Her and I walked to one of the neighboring houses to speak with the neighbors about the incident that occurred.
Do you recall which address that was?
I don't, unfortunately.
That's okay. Did you, at the time of this incident, draft a report?
Yes,
part
I
of your
did.
duties as a police officer?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell us a little bit about the importance of the report?
We document what we saw when we arrived, the date that it occurred on, what officers writing the report, the address we respond to, who we speak to, what they said, if we got any footage or videos we include in our report, say it's attached to the case and information like that.
Would the address that you responded to be included in your report?
Yes, it would.
If I showed you a copy of that report, would it make you refresh your recollection?
Yes.
Page 6, counsel.
Thank you.
Your Honor, may I approach? Thank you. Officer Adams, I'm showing you a copy of your report from that night. If you don't mind just briefly reviewing it, I believe it is the second paragraph, and just Does that help refresh your recollection of the address that you responded to?
Yes, it does.
And what address was that?
I responded to 41, and part of my report says I went to 38.
When you went to 38 Summer Street, can you tell us a little bit about what you did once you got there?
Yeah, this case
Yes,
is
so upon approach, I observed a ring camera. I knocked on the door and I spoke with the resident. My sergeant started speaking with her about the incident that had occurred, asked her a few questions if she had heard anything like that. And then we asked to see her ring camera footage.
Did you personally view that footage with
Yes,
the camera?
yes I did.
If I were to show you that footage, would you be able to identify it?
Yes.
Your Honor, I believe we will need to set up for another view. Thank you. Officer Adams, you'll bear witness for a moment. Counsel, this is 2. Yes.
We may shift it.
This is actually just audio.
y'all get it together.
We're just moving because of the obstruction, Judge. That's all.
Yes.
Your Honor, with permission, I would step down.
Yes.
Sir, can you just briefly step down from the witness stand? Thank you.
I think she said it's just audio.
Counsel, this is full exhibit.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Oh, it is video.
Officer Adams, I'm showing you right now, it is a essentially still shot at the very beginning of a video. Does this look familiar to you? How do you recognize this video? Now, I just want to be clear, this ring camera footage, does this show you the specific address of 41 or 43 Summer Street?
It's next door.
What, based on your review of this, were you able to determine in reviewing this video?
I can hear the argument and the shots that were fired.
Oh, so we might hear a better insight into the argument.
Is this how you recall seeing the video when you viewed it?
Dang. Six shots.
Officer Adams, after you viewed this footage from the resident of 38 Summer Street, what did you then do?
I asked her if she was willing to send it to me via text or email, and she agreed to do so.
She did do so. Did that conclude your involvement? Apologies, you can return. Your Honor, this concludes our use of the television for this particular witness.
Thank you.
These were pretty quick shots too. He said bang, 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 bang.
Officer Adams, I'll re-ask my questions. I interrupted myself a little bit there. Did that conclude your involvement that evening for the purpose of investigation for this incident?
I spoke with the resident and her son from that location. I went back to the police department and I sat in the lobby with the suspect's daughter while she waited to be interviewed with detectives, and that was my end of my involvement.
I just want to clarify, did you personally interview the
I did
daughter?
not. No, I did not.
After her interview was concluded, did you have any further involvement?
I did drive her home, yes.
Did that ultimately end your involvement?
Yes, it did.
Just a moment, Your Honor. All right. Officer Adams, I have no further questions for you. I imagine defense may have a few.
Just a couple. Let me ask you something. You said you heard an argument and you heard gunshots.
In the video, yes, I did.
Yeah, okay. You didn't hear what was said prior to the gunshots.
I did not know, not in that particular video, no.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further?
Just very briefly, Your Honor. I just want to clarify, when you say you heard arguments, was that the kind of noise that we heard just prior to the gunshot?
The conversation afterwards is what I was speaking about.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Your Honor, I have no further questions for this witness.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, so we knocking these witnesses out. Man, I didn't realize, because we didn't hear much on the audio from the other video we saw, that those shots were quick. He said, bang. He didn't really give him much time to do anything after that. So y'all have to let me know what you think so far. Do you think Jason Levesque is guilty, not guilty? Is it too soon to tell? We're going to get into some more testimony moving forward. Y'all let me know what you think in the comments and in the chat. All right, y'all, if you're ready, we're going to keep it moving. I see a bunch of y'all in here. And again, yep, happy birthday to Amy. I see y'all in there saying happy birthday. Big happy birthday to Amy. Let's keep it going. Thank you to everyone who's liked the video so far too. Who do we have up next?
Thank you.
Might have a little bit of a break.
Kyle Deany, stand.
And I think Detective Kyle's gonna come later. Hold on.
Your Honor, you can remember to step up for this. I think I know what you're about to ask.
So let's get to the next witness here.
Sorry. No, my bad. I think we're going to take our afternoon break. We've been going about an hour.
Understood.
I'm trying to go too much more than an hour's spell. So we're going to take our afternoon break. We're going to try to keep this.
So they're taking a break, but y'all know all gas, no brakes. Here we go. We're not taking any breaks.
You raise your right hand. You swear that any testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, as it means to help you the truth.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you state your name, please, and spell it for the court reporter?
Yep, it's Kimberly Edwards, Kimberly Edwards.
What do you do for work?
What was that?
What do you do for work?
I'm a national registered paramedic at Frisbee Memorial Hospital.
I
Shout out to
think our
first
conversation
responders.
can be relatively brief, but if you could indulge us in a summary of your training and experience and your history of work in this area.
Yep. So I started in the medical field in the military. I was in the military for 8 years, and I worked at
Thank
a
you for your
hospital
service.
for 8 years for 4 years with the military, increasing my medical knowledge. When I got out of the military, I joined EMS, and I started as a EMT basic for 2 years and another 3 years as an advanced EMT, and since then I've been working as a paramedic.
And you say as a paramedic, is there a distinction between paramedic, EMT?
Yeah, so as a basic EMT, you can give minimal drugs such as oxygen and aspirin. And as you advance your career, you can give more medications and do more interventions. As an advanced EMT, you can start an IV, give some saline if the patient needs it, if they're dehydrated or whatnot. And as a paramedic, we can do more medication, more life-saving medications and interventions to include taking someone's airway if they were to lose their airway.
Did you respond to the area of 4341 Summer Street on April 4th last year?
I did.
And what was the nature of that call?
So that evening, we got dispatched for multiple gunshot wounds. We arrived on scene to find a patient on the ground with multiple gunshot wounds.
Do you have an estimate of how long it took you to respond to the scene, to arrive at the scene from the time you took the call?
I believe it's about a mile, so it was probably only 2 minutes at most.
Very well. And did you, in fact, attend to a patient at the scene and transport that individual to Frisbee Memorial Hospital?
Yes, I did.
Can you just please summarize, what you saw and what you did during that period of time?
Yep. So when we arrived on scene, PD was rendering medical care along with controlling the scene. So the officer that I took report from had already placed 2 chest seals to the patient. He said that there was multiple other wounds.
Chest seal is
did not
crazy.
at the time have a count, due to it being dark out and the patient being fully clothed. At that time, there were many people there, a lot of people that were distraught and upset, and my partner and I felt that the scene wasn't very secure enough to be able to do a adequate enough assessment on this patient, so we deemed it very necessary to extricate the patient as quick as possible and get him in the back of the ambulance. So we did so. My partner and I, with the assistance of PD, lifted the patient onto the stretcher and put him in the back of the ambulance, where we were able to fully unclothe the patient and find that he had approximately 7 gunshot wounds to his body in multiple locations. At that time, the patient was able to speak to us in very gargled and incomplete sentences. He had blood coming from the airway that we were suctioning throughout our transport to the hospital. We had the decision to either continue on to Portsmouth, where he would get definitive care, or take him to a closer hospital, so that way he could get emergent care and stabilize him. Due to the amount of wounds and the copious amount of blood that he had lost at that time, we did take him to Frisbee Hospital to receive emergent stabilizing care.
And so what was the kind of amount of time you spent from the scene to Frisbee, which is somewhat nearby?
Maybe 10 minutes.
And can I ask you then, and I'll follow up if you feel like additional details.
Yeah, it's a
Can you
miracle he
summarize,
survived for
you said
real.
you saw 7 gunshot wounds. Does your reference to gunshot wounds include entry and exit wounds? Are you even making that determination?
I'm not making the determination of exit wounds and whatnot, because...
Can you briefly summarize for the jury the observations in terms of wounds and his medical condition that you observed during that some 10-minute period of time?
Yeah, so he had a collapsed lung due to a gunshot wound to the upper left-hand side. He had multiple gunshot wounds to his buttocks and down in his genital area. He had one going through his jaw and lodged into the other side of the jaw, which was making it difficult to get the blood out of his airway and making it difficult for us to, if we needed to, take his airway and breathe for him.
And any other treatment that you provided that you have?
Just wound care, stop the bleeding of some of the other wounds that we had found during the transport, suctioning and keeping his airway clear and open. We did attempt to do vital signs. We were only able to get his heart rate and his oxygen saturation due to the patient being just unable to sit still due to the amount of pain and anxiety that he was in at the time. So he was flailing around, and we weren't able to get a blood pressure, which made it unsafe for us to continue on to Portsmouth at that time.
I can imagine.
We attempted an IV, but it got torn out on the way into the hospital. So that was all the care that we were able to render at the time.
You described your patient, Mr. Plow, as being anxious and having a hard time being still. Is he conscious through this process?
He was conscious and aware that he had been shot. Other than saying that I got shot and I'm going to die and giving us his name, he was really not able to say much more than that.
Dang.
And were you able to successfully transport and I guess pass on this patient to the emergent care that you just referred to at Frisbee Memorial Hospital?
Yep, we did get him to Frisbee and transfer him to the nurses and physician.
Do you know a doctor named Dr. Freeze at Frisbee Memorial?
Yes.
Are you aware that he was on scene as well?
He was at the hospital.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, if I could just thank you. Those were the questions I had. Attorney Sisti, I'm not sure you've met before, may have some follow-up questions if you like.
Thanks for coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
All right, again, shout out to the first responders.
This time, I
Amazing.
would like to call Kyle Danny to the stand.
Sir, I trust you know where the witness stand is. If you approach it, face the judge, and remain standing for your
And this is not the Kyle that was shot. This is a different Kyle. This is Kyle Danny.
Good afternoon, Detective.
Good afternoon.
Can you tell us about what your job is, though I do think I gave it away?
My name is Kyle Danny. I'm employed full-time by the Rochester Police Department. I'm currently a full-time detective there. I've been with the department since 2013, and I've been a detective for about 3 years within the division.
Can you tell us a little bit about kind of your come up to detective, your training and experience, where you started off, a little bit of that background?
Sure. Academy first, field training, eventually solo patrol for a while. Eventually I worked into a community engagement division, into a problem-oriented policing division that kind of focused more on problem chronic issues and narcotics, and then worked my way into detectives. During that time also, around probably 2017, 2018, I began working as almost a specialty position or an extra added position of added responsibilities of working on what we called our evidence team. It was more specialized in if we had a scene that was a little bit larger, officers that were a little bit higher trained in the collection, the preservation of a crime scene, documentation of a crime scene, and then the preservation and collection of evidence.
So I'm glad you brought that.
I didn't catch your last name.
Yep, yeah, it's Danny, D-A-N-I-E.
Sure, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I'm glad you brought up the evidence training. Can you tell us a little bit about the specialized training specifically that you've undergone in terms of collecting evidence, assessing a scene, that whole genre of police investigation?
Sure. Just looking kind of at our training coordinator, I said, hey, can I get my past training on all of evidence? And I'd like to say that it's about a month long of the 40 hours 1 week, 40 hours another week. I took a basic 3-week-long training on the collection of evidence, I think from what was called Forensics Training Services, LLC. It's a company that really went from like nuts to bolts of responding to the scene, the preservation of the actual scene itself, and working into photography, different types of things that you might wear to preserve the scene, as well as then working into photographing the scene, collecting those pieces of evidence, and then potentially even examining those pieces of evidence further, whether it's a chemical process, dusting for latent prints with fingerprint powder, as well as other things like that.
Yeah, they take their job
with
seriously.
That training, I've taken additional crime scene photography trainings, fingerprint trainings. The academy now in New Hampshire is certifying their officers, all the recruits, through a basic crime scene training that's 1 week long. I've also gone back to take that, advanced photography, vehicle processing, and so on that way. We aren't a forensic lab, per se. I can process certain pieces of evidence, but at some point we stop and send that to the New Hampshire State Lab for further examination, depending on the piece of evidence and the case.
I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, and then we'll backtrack a little bit just because of talking about your evidence experience. Was part of your role in this investigation processing the scene?
It was.
I'd just like you to tell us a little bit about specifically the role a detective serves at the Rochester Police Department versus, we've heard from sergeants, we've heard from patrol officers, so specifically your duties and responsibilities aside from that evidence collection training that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. So in Rochester, we currently have 7 detectives, a couple other open positions, and a detective lieutenant. We do get some cases firsthand, and when I say that, meaning typically your patrol officer is the first to respond to a 911 call. Detectives, though, sometimes might come to a major call-out where there's an active scene going on, and so we might respond to those things like drug overdose deaths, homicides, physical assaults, sex assaults, things like that we would respond out to pretty much on scene if that happened. Otherwise, we're getting a lot of things that were past tense. I'm applying for search warrants. My day-to-day is really interviewing people, developing probable cause, writing search warrants, obtaining the records from different companies, video, things like that, and so on, and building the case over time. Typically something that happened after the fact that I'm following up, sometimes from an initial officer's report or initial sergeant's report.
Thank you, Detective. I appreciate you going through all of that with us. I know it's new to some people.
Not a problem.
Jury. So were you working on the day of April 4th, 2024?
I wasn't at the time.
You weren't. Did you end up working on that day?
I did, no.
Can you tell us a little bit about how that happened?
I got called in we have 2 detectives that are typically on call, just in case no one was in. I got a call saying, hey, we have a major scene, we have a shooting. Those 2 detectives are tied up with the suspected shooter. We need someone to come in and assist with the processing of a crime scene. And so that's why I was called.
So were you at the police station when you got this call in?
I was at home.
You were at home. Did you go to Summer Street first?
No.
Where did you go first?
I went to the police department, which is pretty typical of any type of call out. I go to dispatch, I like to see what do we have, what do we need for resources, where is this crime scene, what are the things I should be bringing, because I made that mistake before of it being very cold or, very hot, and just getting any other information before going.
So once you arrived at the police station, did you become aware of anything? Did you speak with anyone that made you aware of anything?
Yes, so Officer Birmingham had been back at the station, and from speaking with him briefly, he had been one of the responding officers. He had obtained, it looks to me like a video, like he used a department cruiser phone and videotaped a phone that was playing a video surveillance of the incident that I was supposed to be going out and documenting.
Interesting.
Were you aware at that time of where that footage came from?
I was told that it was from the cameras of 43 Summer Street, which was the alleged victim here, Kyle Violet's house.
So I believe we've already seen that video. Did you personally view that video?
The one that Officer Birmingham showed me, I did.
After you viewed that video, at that point, did you go out to Summer Street?
After grabbing the evidence kit and everything else I needed, yes.
When you arrive at Summer Street, can you tell us a little bit about what you see as you drive up?
Yep. So it was 10, I want to say 10:40, maybe 11. It could be even later than that. So it was dark. It was very cold. It was kind of spitting snow. It had snowed a little bit.
And they did this in the snow too. That's the thing.
There was a couple of different police cruisers that were in the roadway of Summer Street, facing out of town. Like if you're familiar with I know you guys did a kind of a walkthrough area, but away from the police department towards heading towards Eastern Ave. They're facing that way as if they were responding to the call in the roadway, and then there was some yellow caution tape kind of wrapped around some of those cruisers over to a telephone pole to kind of preserve what was believed to be the entire scene.
So after you arrive, you kind of take this scene in. What is your first step in investigation, evidence processing, scene management? What's kind of the first thing you do as you get out of your cruiser?
Yep. So once I meet with whoever was there, so it was Lieutenant Hurley was kind of on scene to point outside the caution tape what they might have seen. I start taking initial photographs. The reason being is I don't want it, anytime I go into a scene, I could introduce either contamination, I could kick something over or anything. So I try to take as much overall photos that show the big picture before we start to go into that scene and look more.
Would you recognize some of those photos if we showed them to you today?
I would.
Your Honor, may I approach? Thank you.
Your Honor, these are full of it.
Thank you. What are the numbers of these now?
These are exhibits 16, 17, and 18.
Very good. Can you carry on?
Here's Dane showing you what has been already been in exhibit 16, 17, and 18. Take would you mind taking a look at those pictures and telling us what you see?
So 16, 17, and 18 appear to be the roadway that would have been in front of 41 Summer Street. And some of these are pictures that I believe the officer must have either taken or body cam before.
Is this visuals depicted in these pictures? Are they familiar to you having arrived on the scene at this point?
The physical layout and the blood on the ground, yes. When I arrived, EMTs had already left the scene as well.
Is this accurate for how the scene appeared minus the EMTs in the corner?
Yes.
Is the blood on the street accurate for how it appeared to you?
Yes.
Is the snow on the street accurate for how it appeared to you?
Yes.
Your Honor, again, I believe you've already been told, but you will have copies of these in your deliberation room. Detective Daney, aside from taking pictures when you arrived on the scene and general observation, did you do anything else regarding evidence collection when you arrived?
Yep. So after taking initial photographs, we started to search the scene for pieces of evidence. I had previously been pointed out by the lieutenant, hey, there's shell casings that they had located with a flashlight. And so from there, we put placards, which is the yellow marker. You might see a number on it. I started with 5 because that's what I had. So we have go, I believe it's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I put a placard by that piece of evidence so that I know not to step on it, as well as to take a photo widescreen so that you can see all those placards and be like, okay, what was placard number 7? And you look and see what that was. And then I'd also take a mid-range and then a close-up of placard, say number 7, with whatever piece that evidence was.
Once you photograph the location of these shell casings, actually I'm going to back up a little bit. Can you just clarify for everyone so we're all on the same page what a shell casing is?
Yep. So with a firearm, you have a shell casing that is enclosed. I'm not by any means a firearms expert or anything, but you have a shell casing, usually brass, metal, that is enclosed with some gunpowder as well as other materials, and then a projectile, usually a lead bullet. And so when a firearm, shoots, it extracts that shell casing after that explosion goes off and a projectile goes out the barrel of the firearm, and the shell casing will get ejected, depending on the type of handgun it is. If it's a revolver, obviously it stays inside, but a automatic, like a handgun, it would extract shooting off.
So we're going to focus on these shell casings for a little bit. Once you photographed where they were and you marked them with the placards, what are kind of your next steps specifically regarding evidence collection for these shell casings? How do you preserve those?
So you said after photographing? So 6 shell casings were located on the ground. After they were photographed close range so you can see, they would be individually taken wearing gloves, put them into a paper envelope, packaged separately.
Your Honor, may I approach? Thank you. Counsel, this is 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, sorry, 18.
Exactly, Amy.
Detective Daney, is this the type of envelope that would be open?
Yes.
Time? If I were to show you this envelope and hand it to you, to be able to determine whether or not these shell casings, these shell casings are in question.
Yes.
Without.
Right. So I'm just looking for the evidence label, Rochester Police Department. Like this one says 9mm Luger shell casing, placard number 10. So I remember that's placard number 10. This is evidence tape. I have my signature and the date that it was signed, making sure that it wasn't reopened or anything like that.
So even without opening the
Probably a lot of bullets in there.
These are the shell casings I collected.
Your Honor, I do move these shell casings be admitted as full exhibits. These are states 13, 14, 13, 14, 12, 9, 10, 11. They're currently marked right there.
That's without objection.
No objection, so exhibits 9 through 14 are posted.
Danny, I'm just going to open these for simplicity's sake. Doesn't matter.
What out? Would you like me to take the shell casing off? Each one?
One is fine. You're on permission to publish it there.
Your Honor, this would be placard number 10, which is, oh, sorry, ID number exhibit 14. So each one of these probably should be in one of these smaller ones, just because that's what I had on scene that was loaded into here. It's also got the number 10 on it for placard.
The labeling both on those 700 dual officers used for the correct placard.
Yeah, exactly. So we have a ton of placards out there. We want to make sure the picture I take and the shell casing I seize and the envelope I put in, I need label number 10 so that when I have, say, 30 shell casings, I can really say this is that one, and that one was located here.
Makes sense.
Yep.
This is one. To your recollection, were they all of this nature?
Yes, they were.
What does that indicate to you as an officer?
That the, I'm sorry.
That they were all essentially identical shell casings.
That came from the same type of gun. You know, often too, we don't see a whole lot of people loading different types of ammunition into a gun. It's all the same type of ammunition, so that could lead me to believe that it probably came from a same type of gun. But the fact that it's all 9mm, it definitely came from a 9mm handgun.
Yeah.
Were shell casings the only piece of evidence that you collected from the scene that night?
It was not.
Can you tell us what else you collected from the scene?
Yep. So
I
in
agree
the
with you.
area where there's the trail of blood, in front of the driveway, right around there, 41, Mr. Levesque residence, there was a black holster for a handgun.
I'm going to pause you there. Would you recognize that holster if you saw it today?
I would.
Stacy. Detective Daney, can you just reiterate for the jury where you found this holster specifically?
It was right in the front area of the driveway or the roadway of 41 Summer Street.
Did you conduct the same method with the holster that you did for the shells in terms of preserving where it was located on the scene?
I did.
Did that include the placard placement?
Yes.
Did that include photographing it?
Yes.
Thank you. Your Honor, may I approach? At the moment, it's Friday. Detective Daney, does this bag also contain the same label, essentially, which Michelle Casey did in terms of where it was collected, placard, and
Yep, so this white, I know you can't read it, but this white thing is what we call an evidence tag for the Rochester Police Department. Gives us a property number, and then I labeled it as the Black Hawk, which is a company holster, placard number 11.
and it was there was a little bit of 1959. And now that you've seen it visually, are you able to confirm that that is the holster that you found?
This is,
in front of some restaurants? Your Honor, I'm getting it from Candace, either as Elizabeth, Stacy.
Without objection.
No objection, this is now to the full exhibit.
Permission to Other than the holster and the shell casings, Detective, did you collect any other evidence that night?
there was some paperwork and looked like receipts and cigarette pack that was located near the area of the holster that was collected.
So you found the holster. Did you find a gun?
Yes. So at the scene, with the blood going up towards the front steps near 41 Summer Street, in the parking lot or the driveway of 41 Summer Street was a truck that had its, it was like a plow truck, and it had its driver's side door open, and an officer was standing by, kind of making sure no one would go in that. That was a told to me that it was identified as Mr. Levesque's truck, and so at that point I had to speak to another detective that was speaking to Mr. Levesque to be able to go into that truck.
Did you ultimately receive permission to go into that truck?
Yep, so I spoke to Detective Garston, who had Mr. Levesque sign a permission
Take
to
care,
search
Les.
the truck and its contents there, which granted me the right to go in and look for any additional evidence.
Upon that permission, were you able to locate a firearm inside that truck?
Yeah, so even looking on the outside with the door open, you could see a 9mm handgun with its slide locked back to the rear and an empty magazine that was separate, and they were both sitting on the driver's seat.
So I just want to clarify, there's the gun and the magazine, are they together at this point?
On
When you
scene,
saw it on the...
they're next to each other. The magazine is not inserted into the magazine well.
Thank you for clarifying, I think I made this heard. Your Honor, I would to show the witness of the marked state exhibit 5 for ID.
Can we approach on this though?
So they had to approach, make sure the evidence is good. Let's skip ahead here. What do y'all think so far? Shouldn't take too long.
Exhibit 5.
There we go.
I'm showing you, I'm going to show you what has been marked as exhibit 5 for ID. This has been rendered safe by all involved personnel
It has.
in this particular matter. I'm not going to hand the box over to you. I'm just going to show you. Do you recognize the firearm in this box?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize the firearm in this box?
Both from photographing it, if we could look back at photos and see the serial number, as well as the fact that the box has the property, and I see the property tag as well. As the property tag, the evidence tape, the signature as well.
I only mentioned about the gun. The gun is not the only item in here. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
What else is in here?
There is a magazine for the gun.
Are you able to tell visually by looking at it if the magazine is empty?
Yes, I am.
Is this the condition in which you found both the gun and the magazine?
It is.
Understanding that it was not the type of box.
Right, it was just, in the condition it was, sitting on the driver's seat.
Thank you, Detective. Your permission to publish.
Just so you know, ladies and gentlemen, so this has been by agreement, it was a full exhibit, it was going to be a full exhibit. Just so you understand the protocol down the road, this weapon will not be sent back to you like all the other exhibits in the jury room. This is the one type of exhibit we don't do that with. If, because it is a full exhibit, if at any point you wanted to inspect it more carefully or see it, we would arrange to have it brought back into the courtroom and have it brought back into the courtroom to look at it. But just for security purposes, we don't allow it. Florida. Yes, you can publish it to the jury.
Thank you, Your Honor. For the record, this is now State's Exhibit 5.
Thank you.
Detective Daney, did you discover anything else in the defendant's truck relating to a firearm while you were searching it?
There was a loaded 9mm magazine separate in a black backpack.
When you say separate, can you tell us where you found that?
I believe that was in the back area, so not in the front 2 seats, in a backpack.
Did you attempt to collect any additional non-firearm evidence from this truck?
I did. So looking at the truck, it had a series of wires, and I noticed what looked like a camera from the rearview mirror that was pointed out towards the hood. I know that sometimes it's typical of people that are plowing to record, and so I looked and saw that it had an SD card slot, and so that camera system was taken in hopes that there would be some video on it.
Did there ultimately end up being any video that was retrieved?
No, after a search warrant was granted, the extraction showed there was nothing, no recordings of anything. So, just
Did
wasn't-
you collect any other recordings from the defendant's property?
I did, not from the truck.
Not from the truck. Can you tell us where you did collect it from?
Yep, so Detective Garston also said that Mr. Levesque had granted permission to obtain I think it was a Night Owl DVR system, which was the surveillance cameras for 41 Summer Street. We were told that there was a system
So he
inside the house,
cooperated.
41, as well as the garage. Myself and Detective Livingstone were able to retrieve the DVR system from the garage because the door was unlocked, but we were unable to, at the time on scene, grab the DVR system from the house because it was locked and no one was answering.
So that night specifically, on April 4th, is that DVR video the last piece of evidence you were able to collect that night?
Myself, yes.
Did you conduct any other investigation that night?
Yep. So upon bringing evidence back to the station and logging it into our evidence lockers, I found that Mr. Levesque's daughter was in the station lobby with officers and hadn't been formally interviewed.
Without getting into the specifics of that interview, Did you ultimately conduct an interview?
An interview was conducted with Detective Livingstone and I and Kira Levesque.
Did that specific interview kind of conclude your investigation for that night specifically?
Yes, it did.
Did that conclude your investigation overall?
No, it did not.
Can you tell us a little bit about the next investigative steps that you took?
The next steps, I believe, was Detective Livingstone and I responded to Boston Medical Center upon hearing that the victim, Kyle Violette, had been transported all the way to Boston for his injuries.
And again, without getting into specifics, when you arrived at Boston Medical, were you able to speak with anyone that was there?
Yep, I was able to speak to Kyle's wife, Angela LaChance, his mother, Cindy Glenn, his daughter, Kendra Violette, and his son, Kylan Violette, was there, but he's a juvenile, and so we didn't speak to him at that time.
Were you able to speak with Kyle when you were there?
I was not.
Why not?
He had a breathing tube down. He was very heavily medicated.
Dang, that's tough, man.
He was conscious, per se, that he could moan maybe in pain, but he wasn't able to talk to us at all.
Would it have been functional for you to even attempt to interview him at that point?
No, there would have been no interview.
Is that the only time you went down to Boston Medical?
It is not.
Can you tell us about the next time you went down?
So when I first went down that time, though, I did photograph his injuries, and then we responded back at a later date because Kyle had a bullet that was extracted from his face.
And you mentioned the photographs. I believe it's already been
It went through his jaw, too.
public admitted as full exhibits. They are 23, 22, 21, 20, 19, and 23.
Councilman, so I only introduced the...
Oh, can't have those conversations out there.
Photographs. Do you recognize those photos?
I would.
Some of those photos. Do you mind just taking a look at this action? Are these photos familiar to you?
They are.
How do you recognize these photos?
These are photos that I took and uploaded to the case from Mr. Violette on the date that we went to Boston Medical Center.
Is this the first time at Boston Medical?
First time, yep. First time meeting Kyle himself.
Your Honor, I move that this all be admitted as full exhibits. That's 24, 19, 20, 21, 22.
If I could just have a quick inspection.
Yeah. So just to be clear, 19 to 20.
Yes.
So 19 always.
I think that was the one that has been previously used.
Maybe.
Detective Daney, is this the extent of all of the photos you took
No,
that day? If you could estimate how many pictures you took, would you be able to do that?
I'd say maybe 30 that day.
Did some of those photos include pictures of the victim in this case's genitalia?
Yes,
Would note that we have not. Did you recognize those photos in the exhibits that I showed you?
yes,
I'm sorry, I want to clarify. The pictures of the genitalial pictures, were those included in the pictures that I showed you?
no.
That's tough.
Did you want to publish these?
Yes, Your Honor, may I publish to the jury?
Yes, you may.
Would you mind giving me a hand?
Detective Daney, we discussed this very briefly.
My preference is going to be showing the exhibits you don't have questions about unless they're about you.
Understood, Your Honor, thank you.
I want it from all behalf.
Again, these will be visible back in your deliberation room once that begins. Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Daney, can you tell us about your second trip down to Boston Medical?
We had been notified, I believe, by either a family member or even the medical staff that there was a bullet that had been extracted from what was believed to be Kyle's face. And so we went down to retrieve that piece of evidence.
Jeez, I'm glad they didn't
Did you
show
ultimately
that.
collect that bullet?
We did.
Detective Daney, I'm going to hand you a pair of gloves.
I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit here.
Detective, I'm going to show you what has been marked as State's Exhibit 15 for identification.
Let's skip ahead a little bit.
Counsel, you may continue your examination. Are we at the point of needing to rearrange where we are in the room?
Yes, let's start with that since the TV is already set, Your Honor.
Was I not supposed to drag it?
It's Detective, if you'll bear with me for a moment while I attempt to set up. But yes,
Yes, sir.
the judge is correct. If you wouldn't mind stepping down off the witness stand. So, Detective Janey, I just want to clarify. In total, how many videos did you view of this incident? Oh.
There was the original video, Officer Birmingham showed me the recording. There was the 43 surveillance camera that had audio. And then there was the DVR systems. I believe there was one on the front porch that faces towards Summer Street at 41 Summer. There was the side angle of the house, and then there was one on the garage. So there should have been 5 potential camera angles, with 2 of them being Officer Birmingham's recording of the same video.
Thank you for clarifying that, Detective.
Do you guys hear me?
Detective, I'm pulling up one of the videos, and I will turn on the TV in a moment so that we're all able to see which one we are looking at here. Does this image itself, prior to the video playing, look familiar to you?
Yes, this looks like one of the camera angles from 41 Summer Street.
Are you able to identify anything in this still of the video that indicates that to you?
Just having reviewed it and seeing kind of the layout, this looks like a work truck as well.
I just want to be clear for the record, this is State's Exhibit 2.
This is a full bit of baby count.
Detective Daney, in your review of the videos that you obtained in this case, did you in any way make notes for your own personal use of what was going on in the videos?
I did.
Can you tell us how you went about making those notes?
Yeah, it's, the way that it was playing was on a VLC player, which allows you to do frame by frame. So I can click it and it'll slowly move. Sometimes I will click it and you won't even have a second pass, but you're seeing the frames move. Just because sometimes in videos we watch something happen very quick and we're going to break it down as what actually happened. So from there, I would take the date, the time of the recording, and you'll see that on the top there's also it goes into the seconds as well. And so from there, I would do the date, the times down to the second, and then narrate what I saw in the case. That's how I documented
It looks like most of y'all are saying Jason is guilty too. Wow.
Before you have not. As we go through this, I'm going to pause occasionally, and we're going to discuss a little bit about what you're looking at both now and when you viewed the videos initially. Are you able to tell us, we've seen quite a few videos and angles of driveways in this particular case, whose driveway are we looking at right now?
This is 41 Summer Street.
Is that?
Okay. This driveway is where, when I arrived on scene initially for the crime scene, the truck was parked facing it.
And when you say the truck, is that the plow truck that we're looking at right here?
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
Can you just tell us a little bit about what you see?
At this point, I see the driver's door open, and I see the driver exiting the vehicle and actually walking past the driver's door.
Is this consistent with the way you viewed this video during the course of your investigation?
It is.
This is the first video that we
Are you able
watched.
to tell us what we're looking at?
This should be Mr. Kyle Violet approaching to Jason back.
At that point, can you tell which direction Mr. Violet is walking?
At that point, pause, it appears he's walking back towards his residence and turns to face Mr. Levesque.
Can you tell us again?
I made the same observation, he's walking back towards 43 Summer Street, but facing Mr. Levesque.
I just want to clarify, you arrived at the scene the night that this happened, correct?
Yeah.
Are you able to tell what is being pointed to based on your knowledge of both the scene and in having reviewed all the videos in this case?
What Kyle Violet's pointing to? He's pointing towards his driveway area where the snow was plowed.
Can you tell us a little bit about what we're looking at, what we just saw?
I saw Mr. Violet pointing back and forth towards what's believed to be the snow pile and then walking out of frame. And then I see Mr. Levesque grab and start to point towards the direction of where Mr. Violet was and start to take a step towards his direction.
When you say grab and point, are you able to tell if you believe he's pointing at Mr. Violet?
Based on just the video alone, no. Based on interviews and the other information as well as the other video and the audio, fine.
Well, at least he's being truthful.
And I just want to
That'd
clarify.
be hard to tell.
Are you able to tell what direction Mr. Violet was walking just prior to the defendant pulling the firearm?
Back towards his residence.
And I do just want to clarify, was there audio on this video when you viewed it?
There was no audio on the DVR system contained. The only audio was from 43 Summer Street video surveillance.
Thank you for clarifying. Are you able to tell in this video which direction Mr. Levesque just stepped?
I have to watch that one more to see again. And this is why I went frame by frame with my notes, because I didn't want to miss any sort of steps there.
I wish we had a better angle.
So it appears to me that Mr. Violet walks forward and then starts to go backwards before what looks like shots fired.
And I just want to clarify, by backwards, is that in the direction of his own home?
Yep, so forwards towards Mr. Levesque, backwards after towards his own home, and then shots fired.
Okay, so it doesn't appear that he's walking towards Mr. Levesque.
Not at that time.
And that flash that we just saw, are you able to tell us what you believe that was?
I'd say it's consistent with a gunshot.
We just saw the defendant move a little bit in that last frame, and I understand I'm stopping and starting this a lot, so if you need me to go back, please let me know, and I'm happy to replay some of that. Can you tell us, during the review that you did of this video where you went frame by frame, were you able to tell, sounds like you had better pausing technology than we do, approximately how many steps the defendant took towards Mr. Violet after that first shot, or between that first shot and the remaining shots?
What I have it narrated in my report, I believe it was 5 steps towards the direction of Mr. Violet after the first shot was fired.
Were you able to tell in your frame-by-frame review about how long of a pause there was between that first shot and the next shots?
If you looked at my report with the time frame, you'd be able to read that. Yes.
So it sounds like I don't want to try and put words in your mouth, but would taking a look at your report
Yes,
help
I'd be able to
look
calculate
at
the
that?
time frame of showing first shot versus the time I narrate looking at the next shot.
Thank you. This is just.
We can have one second.
I want to see if the defense gets a turn here.
Detective Daney, I'm showing you one of the pages of the report that we just made. This is that.
We shall hopefully get into that here shortly.
Is there something you want me to read or just answer the question?
Just to answer the question.
How long?
Mhm. Approximately how long?
this, I would just need to look at the second camera as well. Is that something that's okay? It's because he steps out of frame, I don't see the next shots going. I can tell you when he walks towards and steps out of frame and then walks back, just on this camera angle alone. But the second camera picked up him walking forward more, and then what I deemed the shot.
We'll go back to that with the next camera then.
So, a matter of 6 seconds between walking forward and then being seen back on camera.
Thank you for that one moment. Looks like we timed out. Just a moment, Your Honor. Thank you. Thank you. So you mentioned a couple of the other videos. Does one of the other videos you obtained from the Levesque house give an angle of what's happening out of frame in this particular video?
It does. It gives more of a context of what Kyle is doing and what happened when Mr. Levesque steps out of the camera angle facing towards Kyle. I'll tell you that both, I mean, having both angles.
Can we see it?
We can see what happened by the car, and then we can see what also happened past the hedges and in the front of the house. Both are able to tell the story.
You can see it snowing there too.
Camera angle in a moment. You mentioned this a little bit earlier, that it seems very fast watching the video just as a video itself. Going frame by frame, did that allow you to get a better sense?
I quite literally did bullet points of any time someone's body type of turn. So an example would be Kyle takes steps towards Mr. Levesque. Mr. Levesque is looking at him. Kyle turns around this way. So each camera angle had several different bullet points in a matter of a second, a couple seconds. And this would be that same camera angle you showed me.
Yes.
Okay.
Having both been at the scene and having reviewed all the videos in this case, are you able to estimate approximately how far Mr. Violet was from Mr. Levesque?
Okay. From the point where he gets face to face with him to the point where the shot was fired, I'd say that's maybe about 10 to 15 feet. That's just looking at like the distance and looking at how much the truck takes up in the video and knowing the size of average.
Detective Lee, we're going to take a look at that next video you mentioned.
All right, so I think we're gonna stop it there, y'all. Let me know what you think about this so far. Interesting to see his perspective and him point out the amount of steps he took, how long it took between the shots, and we're gonna see moving forward how the defense is gonna attack this in another video. But I want to know what y'all think so far when it comes to, was Jason justified in this instance? Now we can get into the law. We know what the law says. I've reviewed that over and over. I want to know how y'all think and how y'all feel about this as just someone who would be on the jury. How do you feel about what Jason did, what Kyle did, and the results that happened after that? Let me know what you think in the comments and in the chat. And again, shout out to the gang. I appreciate all 873 of y'all that liked the video. Dang. Y'all know what time it is. We are going to be back here tomorrow at Ooh, let's see. What time should I say? I'm not going to say a time because y'all know sometimes I be moving it around because we got breaking news. I do have a story I want to get to. We've got some updates about Drake and UMG. We're going to get to that tomorrow, as well as continuing with this trial. Happy birthday to Amy. We're going to be celebrating Amy's birthday tonight, as well as our 100K milestone. We're going to be unveiling our YouTube plaque for this channel, and we're going to be giving away some awards to some of the independent artists in this community. So make sure y'all tune in tonight, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be a great time. We're going to have a great show, and I'm looking forward to seeing y'all there. As always, have a great afternoon, and you know what to do. Keep growing, keep pushing, keep it classy. We gone. Peace, y'all. Free Ed Gotti, free Jason, free all them boys, man.